Welcome back to the channel. This is Trainee Storm and you are watching second and final part of What If Naruto Kakashi and Guy accidentally goes to Attack on Titan universe. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
As the yellow flash gave him a pat on the back and moved past him in the other direction, the man felt nothing but a hand on his shoulder. His life was saved. Erwin returned to group with a stoic demeanor as the trainees watched. The Iwa shinobi's face twisted in anger and sadness as he sobbed again. Only he was spared as one man ruthlessly slaughtered all of his friends. He simply couldn't accept that reality. He is prepared to fight to exact revenge on his friends and comrades, not for the sake of peace. The man stood up, grabbed his sword, and charged at the blonde man who was leaving. Who saw what he was doing? The man yelled, "Rua ahhhh." As he prepared to attack his opponent with his sword, he swung his blade as forcefully as he could. As the blade approached said blonde man, time seemed to slow down. It would only be a foot away before it touched. It's too late, most of the trainees thought. He can't possibly dodge this one, as they kept their eyes fixed on him the entire time. The man with the blonde hair closed his eyes. "I'm sorry." When he finished speaking to the Iwa soldier's posterior, the man abruptly left his position with kunai in hand. He quickly severed the man's head, beheading him as more blood gathered around him. The Iwa soldier's corpse collapsed onto the ground, splattering blood all over his face. After soaring through the air, the head landed where the trainees were before the head fell in front of him. Erwin had nearly made it to the group. Erwin could still see the sadness and hatred in its eyes when he looked into them for a moment while it was still in the air. The dismembered head made a sickening squelching sound as it struck a stone and rolled over to the center area where the trainees were, but he continued to move forward unfazed. When they saw such a graphic scene, many of them became frightened, and some of them began to throw up. As the world began to twist again, Kakashi said, "This man is Namikaze Minato, the Yondaime Hokage, leader of my village, my teacher, the first presumed child of prophecy in my world." Memories began to play through everyone's eyes, and the scene became clear again. One of the young boys in the first picture was thought to be Kakashi. Another man, whose hair was the same color as the young boy's, was slumped on the ground. Dead. A blade was driven deep into the man's stomach, leaving him covered in blood. "Dad." The young boy sobbed softly. "Those who disobey the rules are garbage, but those who desert their fellows are even worse," declared a teenager from Uchiha. After using his chakra blade to defeat an Iwa soldier, the younger Kakashi remarked, "I can't leave a crybaby ninja like you alone, can't I?" Kakashi shouted, "Obito, no," as he witnessed his friend being crushed by a massive rock. Kakashi's dying friend said, "Kakashi, I leave Rin to you." Kakashi, with his recently transplanted eye, screamed, "Chidori," as he faced another Iwa soldier. "Rin, I'm sorry." Kakashi admitted his guilt as they all watched Kakashi's life. The scenes simply continued. Rin's heart was pierced by Kakashi. Chidori. Rin tore his arm from her and went unconscious, whispering, Kakashi, before passing away. As Kakashi encountered the atrocities of war in battle after battle, the following memories were all the same. After an hour of this, Kakashi changed his subject. By then, a few of the younger trainees had begun to cry over Kakashi's tragic tale and struggles. "Through war, I have learned life will always not be fair. Things will not always go the way you would expect it to be." Kakashi told the story, "But if I have learned one thing, it is that we are shinobis, ones who endure. I will keep going no matter what." The scene shifted to a vast village that spanned miles. "Now then, it is about time I show you my home, the village hidden in the leaves, Konohagakure," Kakashi narrated for the trainees. It was about 3 times as large as their home districts. The village was illuminated by the full moon, which was visible in the sky. There was peace and quiet everywhere, or so they believed. Poof! From the middle of the village, a huge cloud of smoke rose, obliterating everyone in its path. When it subsided, though, fear was evoked again, even among the trainees, who were safe. The entire village was shaken by the roar of a monstrous fox that suddenly appeared out of the smoke. It was larger than the colossal titan itself. Damn it! How is it possible to combat such an entity? As the beast swung its tail and swamped its claws, destroying numerous village foundations, many people thought many shinobi used whatever jutsu they had in their arsenal or threw explosive kunais as they leapt high into the air and charged at the beast. Explosions filled the air, creating a dazzling and flaming light display. It is impossible for me to imagine such individuals to exist, to produce power as powerful as our cannons, move so quickly, and leap so high without the use of 3D maneuver gear. Who are these individuals? Jean pondered. Reiner and Berthold were unable to contain their shock at what was happening in front of them. The other trainees weren't all that different. This was really overwhelming. Abruptly, everyone found themselves in the village that the beast had destroyed. Kakashi described the creature as the monster before you is called the Kyuubi, one of the beasts mentioned before with the Sage of Six Paths, as everyone gazed up at it, marveling at its enormous size that towered over them all. As energy began to build up within it, its tails abruptly lifted and pointed in the direction of its mouth as a compressed ball of condensed chakra formed in its mouth. Everything started to get sucked and the Yondaime was ready for battle at the Hokage monument, which the Kyuubi gazed at. He hurled his compressed chakra ball in his direction. The trainees weren't going to be overly shocked if the attack destroyed the monument because the ball itself appeared to be very powerful with his signature tri-pronged kunai floating in the center of his palms. The Yondaime merely raised both of his hands forward as the Biju Dama was absorbed and vanished. Seals filled the air before him. A very big explosion was heard in the distance a moment later. The nearby forest sustained significant collateral damage when the condensed chakra ball exploded. The trainees gaped at such devastation, not anticipating such power. They can wipe out humanity, many believed, and bring the military back home to its knees with such power. Reiner grinned nervously. Reiner joked, "Makes it look like we have it better off, eh?" Even though he knew that wasn't totally accurate because they couldn't take their eyes off the scene for even a moment. Nobody paid much attention. Even Erwin found such an occurrence somewhat perplexing. At that moment, a short, elderly-looking man leapt toward the beast, ready to attack with his staff. To everyone's surprise, again, the man's staff grew enormously as he struck the Kyuubi with a powerful swing, successfully knocking it back. "That man there is our Sandaime Hokage, one of the most feared men at his time, nicknamed the Professor," Kakashi said. The Sandaime underwent a series of hand seals Kaden, Enden Karyu. As it struck the Kyuubi, causing its head to rear back due to an explosion, a massive flame bullet that resembled a dragon's head shot out of the man's mouth. It responded with a growl. A portly man with red hair wearing brownish-green armor accompanied the Sandaime to a nearby roof. "Akamichi Choza reporting for duty, sir." "Right, get to it," summoned the Sandaime. He replied, "Right," and then leapt in the direction of the Kyuubi. He made a seal with his hands. "Baika no Jutsu," he exclaimed, rising above everyone as smoke filled the air. The man grew to a size comparable to that of the colossal Titan. Titan abilities were not necessary for this man to transform into a monster. Everyone was caught off guard by this. Before vanishing in another cloud of smoke, the man started to struggle with the Kyuubi, flipping it over and tossing it aside with all his strength. The Sandaime beat the Kyuubi around again with his adamantite staff, weakening it even more until it was dazed again. "The Inuzuka clan is ready, sir," exclaimed a man astride a large, ferocious-looking dog. "Go," said the Sandaime. He replied, "Okay." With the support of numerous other members of his clan in a swift spinning motion, they all took off into the air while mounted on their canine companions. They were spinning at such a high speed that it appeared to be some kind of drill. Eventually, they all merged their attacks into a single, enormous corkscrew. "Gatsuga." The Kyuubi drilled into his head as they collided head-on, sending sparks flying everywhere before shattering. The Kyuubi became even more enraged and shook off the attack. "We're just not inflicting enough damage," the Sandaime concluded. After all of this work, despite his age and retirement, he chose to continue fighting even though he was getting a little tired. The Sandaime was joined by one shinobi, who informed him of the latest developments. "Sir, Nara Shikaku and the others are ready to proceed with the plan." Dodging a burning building the Kyuubi threw at him, the Sandaime replied, "Launch the operation." As he and his clan prepared their technique, Shikaku Nara continued his plan in the distance. "All right, let's go," they all say as they bind the Kyuubi with their shadow possession technique. Limiting its range of motion, he shouted to his longtime friend, now Choza, as the giant red-haired man charged and tackled the Kyuubi, knocking it off balance. "Inoichi," exclaimed the giant. A long-haired blonde man with a ponytail exclaimed, "Okay," indicating that everyone should launch a coordinated assault. Everyone in the village heard his message as they got their hand seals or tools ready. The Sandaime, glowing a pale blue, completed his hand seals. "Charge," he exclaimed as the whole village was bathed in blue light. The whole village exclaimed, "Ruah ahhhhh," as they all displayed their skills while everyone made do with what they had. Most shinobis threw massive fireballs at the Kyuubi. The Kyuubi was suddenly struck by thousands of balls of fire, causing it to retreat with each passing second until all of the techniques created a massive explosion that caused it to stumble outside the village. Now exhausted, the Sandaime gasped for breath and turned to face the enemy in front of him. "We did it, but we must press on," he exclaimed as he charged forward again, leading a large group of men. Erwin and the trainees were left behind when they finally vanished in fast motion blurs. Everyone thought it was an incredible battle. Erwin, too, couldn't contain his joy as he grinned at the spectacle. Humanity has a chance against the Titans with abilities like these, he pondered. His focus was swiftly diverted when the landscape shifted once more, this time featuring a long, red-haired woman and the Yondaime Hokage battling the Kyuubi. Since they were far away, the trainees were unable to hear what they were saying. The blonde man faced the Kyuubi, who was encircled by golden chains, and executed a series of intricate hand seals. It began to drastically shrink a few moments later, unaware of what would happen next. Even a few of the trainees had begun to applaud the Yondaime's victory by this point. He now loosened the chains that bound the giant fox, intending to knock them all down as the two figures were impaled by the Kyuubi's claw. Everyone's eyes widened. Everyone thought, no way. They were most shocked, though, by the impaled woman's apparent resistance, as she held back the claw and the beast with such terrible strength that the ground beneath her began to collapse under the weight of it. Nevertheless, she remained firmly planted in her position. Everyone started sprinting in their direction. They soon saw the Sandaime Hokage, who appeared to be unable to get past an imperceptible barrier that kept people from entering or leaving the Kyuubi's location. Since they didn't exist yet, the trainees phased through the barrier anyhow. When they arrived at the impaled figures, they were once more taken aback by the sight of a newborn baby on a small altar. The baby had a tuft of blonde hair on his head and whisker marks on his cheeks. Despite having very little knowledge, Armin was able to make connections. He exclaimed, "That's Naruto," as he realized everything. "Correct," replied Kakashi. He shocked everyone by revealing that the killing machine they had previously seen was Naruto's father. Because there is no known way to kill a Biju, the only option was to seal it away into a person. Our Yondaime chose no other person but his only son, he concluded. However, that's not all, continues Kakashi. Our Yondaime knew there was a greater evil behind all of this, so he entrusted his son with this power that he would one day access to defeat that man. Who is that man then? Erwin inquired, clearly interested. After a moment of silence, Kakashi responded. Nothingness filled the air, and the world twisted itself again. As the illusions created a man wearing a black cloak with red cloud insignias all around, he replied, "Uchiha Madara." An ominous glowing red eye was visible through a single eyehole in an orange swirled mask that covered his face. The Sharingan. After hearing Toba's justification for his actions, Madara reprimanded, "Humph, I guess you can't trust brats these days." Up until Kakashi discovered the key to his methods, Toby did have the advantage. Madara was surprisingly not at all incensed about what had transpired. He was actually a little irritated and bored. Madara pointed to the mask and said, "Why don't you take off that mask around me, boy?" Toby was apprehensive because he knew he had long since thrown away his former self. As long as the dream world was realized, he just didn't care about this world anymore. Toby glared at Madara and firmly said, "No," Madara uttered, "Fey whatever brat, just go clean yourself up, you're a mess." As Toby entered his Kamui realm to get a fresh outfit and a new white mask to replace his partially damaged one, he vanished in a whirling vortex. He was a little cleaner and fresher when he returned to Madara. "What do you think we should do now? I already have all the necessary components to begin the ritual." Toby offered an idea. "It really doesn't matter if they are captured or not, the outcome will still be the same without them." Madara pondered for a while before making up her mind. "Nah, let's go look for them." Toby was shocked by his hasty choice. Such an endeavor can be perilous and time-consuming. "I don't want to spend an eternity searching for something we no longer need," Toby stated. Madara laughed. He recalled the moment he saved Toby from death by crushing him under a rock. "I'm already a dead old man. I can do this without you if I really wanted. However, didn't you say your motto was to help the elderly?" he asked. He glared again, and Toby reminded him, "You yourself said I owe you nothing." Madara folded his arms and stared off into the distance, saying, "True, true. However, what other choice do you have? I'm the only one who really know how to work infinite Tsukuyomi after all," he replied with a smirk. After this, Toby fell silent for a little while longer. He said, "Fine, where do we begin?" Madara grinned while making his way to the Gedo Mazo. "Follow me." The Elemental Nations. 30 minutes prior to Naruto's disappearance, Itachi recalled Shisui saying, "True heroes are ones who protect from the shadows." That being said, Itachi by no means thought of himself as good. He killed every Uchiha he came across that fateful night, leaving his hands stained with the blood of his brethren. Furthermore, his own younger brother became a missing nin, an international criminal, as a result of him. Itachi believed that he had so far failed at everything he attempted to do on his own. Itachi recalled telling Naruto, "Never forget your friends." He grinned. He reasoned that he would eventually follow the correct path and become a role model for everyone. As of right now, after a protracted and exhausting battle, Itachi and Sasuke have discovered Kabuto's secret location and defeated him as pillars of light erupted into the sky, signifying a new hope for peace. They also compelled him to release the Edo Tensei, Thanks to Itachi's Izanami, Itachi also started to glow with energy, indicating his transition into the afterlife. With a disappointed tone, Sasuke remarked, "So I guess this is it, honey-san? I can slowly feel my consciousness slip away, but before saying goodbye, I will tell you what you wanted to know. There is no reason to lie anymore," Itachi said as he approached Sasuke. "What I did that night happened is exactly the way Tobi and Danzo said. I will show you the truth," he exclaimed as he used his Sharingan to play a memory on Sasuke, exposing the full Uchiha incident and its backstory. "I can only ask you this because you are my best friend, thus, kindly keep the village safe," as Shisui gouged out his last eye and gave it to Itachi, he said, "and the Uchiha's name." Well, Fugaku and his wife were kneeling on a mat in the center of the room when he remarked, "I see you joined their side, Itachi. Itachi, assure me that you will look after Sasuke," Fugaku went on. "Don't worry. Our suffering will be immediate in contrast to yours." Before accepting his fate, Fugaku concluded, "I'm still proud of you, though." After cutting down his mother and father, Itachi sobbed uncontrollably, tears streaming down his face. "You really are gentle," he said in his final words before passing away. As Itachi completed his genjutsu and approached his Edo Tensei time limit, the memories came to an end. He continued to reach out his hands as he approached Sasuke, saying, "I always lied to you, asking you to always forgive me, but I kept distancing you with my own hands. Perhaps it would have been you who could have changed the Uchihas and our parents if I came to you first." He gently touched Sasuke's forehead and said, "But no matter what you do from now on, I will always love you, little brother." But Itachi was troubled by something in the air. He experienced a huge spike of chakra and its disappearance, even though he wasn't a sensor type. "Is Naruto?" Itachi pondered. He ran back to Kabuto as a precaution. Tsukuyomi. To carry out his command once more, Itachi sent the motionless Kabuto into another genjutsu. For the following few seconds, Kabuto used a variety of hand signals. Itachi's luminous radiance subsided as he maintained his physical shape. He was no longer a puppet after escaping the Edo Tensei caster's grasp. "Ni-san, what's going on?" Sasuke inquired inquisitively. He commented, "Something new has caught my attention. Call it a hunch, but I always tend to have these kind of things correct," as he made his way to the entrance to the cave. Sasuke joined him and said, "HMPH, fine, but I'm coming with you too, alright?" At that moment, the cave's ceiling gave way. "Oh, we found you, Sasuke!" exclaimed a fresh voice when the dust settled. Two well-known faces emerged. Jugo and Suigetsu were there. After that, the group briefly discussed what was happening during the conflict. "What business do you have with me now? Why have you come looking for me?" asked Sasuke. Suigetsu remarked, "Oh, you know, we found a cool lair thing and stuff." When Jugo heard from his animals, he made the decision to speak up. "You said you and Itachi stopped Kabuto's Edo Tensei technique, right?" The brothers Uchiha gave a nod. "Well, it seems the Edo Tensei of Madara is still around." The boys' eyes grew wide with disbelief. "Madara?" Itachi told them, "This situation is worse than I thought. Hurry. We must leave immediately," as they all hurried to their destination from the cave. While examining the Gedo Mazo, Madara asked Tobi, "Do you why they're not in your Kamui realm?" Tobi answered, "Not really, I do have a theory though." "Well, let me enlighten you then," Madara replied. "As you know, there are different types of techniques ranging from elemental and yin-yang releases," he said. "For example, the Nara clan's Hinjutsu of shadow techniques is a type of yin-yang release that is not made up of elements. Same goes for the Akamichi's clan secret techniques, as well as they proportionally expand their bodies at will." "I know that much," Tobi shot back, a little irritated at being lectured about such trivial matters. "Well, for one thing, as you know, our eye techniques are partially yin-yang based techniques as well. The Gedo Mazo is an abomination of potent chakra and power, aging since the days of the Sage of Six Paths. It is after all the former shell of the Jubi itself," Madara said. "My conclusion is that you simply overloaded and carelessly used too much yin-yang chakra from the Gedo Mazo and used your Kamui technique to inadvertently rip open a hole into another dimension, therefore slimming our chances of finding the last two remaining bijus." Tobi thought for a moment before responding, "Which is why I propose we just initiate the ritual now so that we don't have to go through any more trouble." Madara grinned. "I suppose it would be a good idea. The Jubi won't be at its fullest potential, but it will do I for the plan," said Madara. "But we're still going to get them anyways." Tobi scowled. "Maximum potential? Why would he require it in its most powerful form?" Tobi thought Madara might have had ulterior motives for his schemes as he wrenched his mind from such a rebellion. Tobi made the decision to stop pushing. "So how do you propose we track them down?" he inquired. "Out there are countless of dimensions and worlds that exists no one even knows about. If we try and open a new one, We can just be searching one in millions of them with no success, Madara said. However, thanks to the Rinnegan, we can trace down chakra much easier than before, so we can narrow down the possible dimensions they're in by a few thousands or hundreds if we're lucky. He went on. He grinned with a hint of curiosity and said, well then brat, let's get started, shall we? As he reconnected with the Gedo Mazo and drew in its alien chakra, Toby nodded. Kamui. After he had a good lock on some of Naruto's chakra, Toby started the plan. As they all kept their portal forms, he rapidly focused his chakra and energy to tear open dimensional holes to random worlds. After several minutes, the portals occupied a whole field, appearing to be infinite from the perspective of the average person, but there were actually only a few thousand of them. Madara smirked at Toby and said, "Umai, that's quite a lot then, don't you agree? Let's not beat around the bush any longer and get to work." Both of them started to move in the direction of the portal field, prepared to arrive at their first dimensional destination, until Madara. When the two men turned to see who had called their names, they saw a man with dark raven hair and a red robe hurrying toward them. Toby muttered, "Uchiha Itachi, to think you would trouble me once more," and pulled out his gunbai. Uchiha? Madara wondered. He just stood with his arms crossed, waiting for the newcomer to attack. "Well then, let me see how good this generation is," he said. As soon as a red, glowing skeletal arm materialized, balling its fist and swinging it at the ancient Uchiha, Itachi quickly pulled out his Susanoo, but it emitted a blue glow and was soon captured by another skeletal arm. As his Susanoo and Itachi's fought for supremacy, Madara grinned to himself. To think there would be another Uchiha who could use Susanoo other than me. Impressive. Madara complimented Itachi. However, it will take more than that to take me down. As they broke their death grip battle with their Susanoo, the two shinobi leapt away from one another. Madara started to feel 3 new people coming to fight the fabled Uchiha. 3 more young men arrived on the scene. Amaterasu. Sasuke's eye glowed red until black flames began to rise from the earth. Headed straight for Madara, he swiftly pulled out his Susanoo to protect himself from the fierce flames. Black flames, huh? So this brat could use the Amaterasu? Heh, not bad at all, Madara said, using his Rinnegan skills to extinguish the flames. Seeing that his attack had failed, Sasuke frowned. Madara said, "I admit, you've got some potential, brat. However, as of now, you are nothing but an ant to me," while performing the horse hand seal. Kaden. Mekyaku Goka. Madara's mouth burst into flames, and a massive firestorm swiftly reached the young shinobis. Itachi leapt ahead of them. Susanoo. Itachi pulled out his last Susanoo, armed with the Totsuka blade and Yata mirror. The mirror deflected the flames, making the powerful and wide-ranging attack ineffective, and the flames overpowered the small group. My, one of the great imperial treasures, the Yata mirror and the Totsuka no Tsurugi. If I get careless, you can surely become a real threat, Madara remarked, aware that he would need to exercise greater caution around Itachi. Itachi's Susanoo roared as he started charging Madara. More hand seals were run through by Madara. Mokuton. Jukai Kuden. He exclaimed as plants and roots emerged from the battlefield, blocking Itachi's path to his targets as roots started to encircle his Susanoo. With a quick motion, his Susanoo used his Totsuka blade to hack away at the forest of wood and roots that started to bind him, deflecting the remainder with his shield under Itachi's Susanoo. Madara concentrated the root growth. He was always entangled by the roots and thrown into the air, where more roots started to seize him. Sasuke shouted for his brother, Ni-san. As he rushed in his direction, more roots, however, swiftly pushed him back, requiring him to use his Susanoo ribcage to cushion the blow. Madara said, "You are definitely worthy of the title of Uchiha Young One," he said of Itachi. "However, this is the end. Be gone with you," he said, hurling him quickly into the field of portals with the roots. Sasuke exclaimed, "No, Itachi," as he watched his brother vanish into the rift. "I'm sorry, Sasuke," Madara remarked. "HMPH, not even I know where that portal leads to." Madara turned to the trio and said, "But let's hope it's a better place than this world for his sake." "See you later," he said with a wave. He ordered, "Let's go, Toby," and the portals, Toby, and himself vanished in a whirlpool. In the realm of Kamui, Madara said, "So shall we begin uninterrupted?" As the two entered the first portal in search of the remaining bijus, Toby nodded in agreement. Commander Erwin looked at the cloaked figure wearing a plain orange mask and said, "Uchiha Madara?" "Yes, one of the original founders of our village," Kakashi replied. "However, he mysteriously defected and instead tried to destroy it in the end, and we have suspicions that he was the one that caused the Kyuubi attack on our village all those years ago, killing my teacher along with many other shinobis," Kakashi continued. He bluntly stated, to basically put it short, because of him, We have now entered a fourth world war and sent us to another dimension via his powers. As he terminated everyone's genjutsu, he is a shinobi. After all, unlike a certain blonde idiot, he shouldn't be willing to divulge private information. Sometimes using discretion is a good idea. After being under his influence for a while, everyone blinked and shook themselves awake, feeling lightheaded. A fresh voice said, "About time." Everyone turned to see that it belonged to Captain Levi, who was idly leaning against the wall. "You all had these stupid looks on your faces for over half an hour." Erwin said, "Ah, sorry Reveal, we were preoccupied," before heading out the door. Levi said, "Where are you going now?" Erwin remarked, "To write a report, a long one." Since he knew he wouldn't be going to sleep anytime soon before departing from everyone else, he told Levi, "Show them to their new quarters." Levi gave a nod. In the meantime, B sat quietly writing in his rhyme book. Kakashi read his precious Icha Icha in a perverted manner. Guy intimidated other trainees by explaining the power of youth, and Naruto was loudly dozing off on a nearby table. Levi kicked Naruto awake out of mild annoyance. "Ouch." Naruto stumbled slightly and fell off the table. He scanned his surroundings until he noticed a short, black-haired man staring at him with cold eyes. Naruto roared, "Why Ata?" and began to advance directly on the shorter man. Naruto at ease issued Kakashi's order. "Just you wait," Naruto snidely said, scowling a little before turning back to the shorter man. He thought, "Oh, the tricks he's going to be in for." Levi directed them in his direction and said, "You four are to come with me for tonight." Everyone went along with it. Following a largely silent journey, the four soon reached an ancient-looking base when Levi said, "This is where we are all going to be staying tonight along with my squad and Eren." He opened the base. Levi trailed behind the four shinobis as they entered the building. As they entered the first room, they noticed a man with curly hair who resembled Levi conversing with a man with long blonde hair that was tied back. A dark-skinned man sat quietly in his seat beside Eren, while a girl with walnut-colored hair drank tea. Eren's eyes brightened and he looked up. "You guys," he exclaimed with joy. "Eren!" Naruto exclaimed as he went past Oluo, a somewhat Levi-like character. He hurried by, but not before unintentionally running into his shoulder. The man bit his tongue. "Oh ouch! You brat!" the man exclaimed, splattering blood all over the place. He shouted, "Watch where you're going." Naruto retorted, "Well, serves you right for yapping so much. Wanna go, you brat?" "Sure." The two wills went up into each other's faces, glaring at one another in frustration as sparks flew between them. Levi said casually, "As of right now, you guys are the responsibility of the Scouting Legion. Erwin asks you not to do anything too drastic," and then he turned to walk out of the room. Eren and Hanji were already conversing reluctantly. Eren inquired about her research. Someone let out a frustrated groan, and Oluo nudged Eren to stop talking because she didn't want to hear her fixation. But when she started presenting her findings, the damage was already done. With the exception of a shinobi and an Eren, everyone got up and left the room. The shinobis and Eren had to sit through a lengthy and rather dull lecture from Hanji for the next hour because she wasn't going to stop talking anytime soon. While Naruto only listened to the most crucial information before growing disinterested, Kakashi and the other Junins noted significant information. He reasoned that it would be best to leave a clone at his house and leave covertly when she was not looking. The clone also wanted out, so that plan quickly fell apart before Hanji could notice. Naruto let out a moan and released the clone. Sweat fell from everyone else's faces. By this point, night had fallen. Luckily, the lecture ended when everyone made the decision to go to bed. Everyone would resume training tomorrow. The Scouting Legion captured 2 Titans. Based on what everyone could gather, they discovered that the Titans were actually immortal beings who lived on Earth and relied solely on the sun for energy. No fresh findings regarding weaknesses except for the colossal and armored Titan. There were no indications of intelligence. Before long, everyone went to their separate sleeping areas. It was going to be a busy day tomorrow. A good distance away, tonight, Itachi was just not having any of it. Despite being an Edo Tensei, he would become agitated if he didn't have a moment of calm while running through a forest and leaping from tree to tree. When Itachi regained consciousness earlier, he was 5 feet deep inside a tree trunk. He crawled outside and looked around. Where had he gone? He pondered. He tried to find his way by looking up at the stars when he discovered that the formations were different from those back home. He frowned abruptly. He recalled what had transpired. He was thrown into a different dimension by Madara. Before descending from the tree, he swore to himself. He thought to himself, "I might not be able to get home at all," as he strolled through the forest. He stopped suddenly. He was certain that he heard something. He just stood there and listened. Thump thump thump, Itachi thought, bracing himself for a gigantic animal or something big, and it's nearby. But no, a giant-like creature rather than an animal emerged from the tree maze. What on earth? Itachi thought as he looked at the enormous figure. Despite having no clothing or reproductive organs, it had a human appearance. The stench of blood reeked from it. Itachi decided to leave after taking a step back. Snap! Itachi broke a twig by stepping on it. The creature swiveled its head toward him. Itachi just cursed his negligence and said, "Shit," before leaping onto the tree and climbing out of its filthy hands. He thought to himself, "Perhaps it's best I avoid a direct confrontation for now," and started to head out in search of civilization. He knew that in 4 hours it would be morning. Now would be a good time to use it, he surmised. Naruto let out a loud yawn as the sun shone in his eyes through the blinds at the former Scouting Legion base. He yelled, "Good morning." As he noticed that everyone else had already woken up, Kakashi just sat down and stared into space, appearing to be the most exhausted of the group. With concern, Naruto said, "Oi Kakashi-sensei, you okay?" Oh, it's nothing," Kakashi had answered. "Best we go eat something?" As they left, everyone else nodded in agreement. The first people in the dining room were the shinobis from the opposite side of the building. They could hear the footsteps. They believed that everyone else had started to awaken before the rest of Levi's team showed up. They waited courteously for another 15 minutes. Uren came out of the cellar. "Good morning everyone," said Uren. Levi moaned. Everyone else waved or nodded. Petra said, "Oluo, isn't your turn for kitchen duty?" Despite his forgetfulness, he struck himself. "Oops, I'll go right away," he said, rising from his chair. The Kakashi pulled out 2 scrolls and spread them out on the table. They questioned his actions and held odd markings. Jokingly, "That's a long napkin," Gunter said. "What is this? Arts and crafts?" "Ah, not really," Kakashi remarked, touching a few seals with his finger. A makeshift feast consisting of noodles, beef, chicken, and more was released as he transferred some chakra to the paper and puffs of smoke burst out. After reading the news and seeing them summon food out of thin air, Eld, a blonde man, remarked, "I guess they weren't exaggerating when they said magic." "Again, not really. These are storage scrolls. We would put items in here for easy to carry storage. Quite handy indeed," Kakashi concluded. "Well, let's dig in. Itadakimasu." "Itadakimasu," the other shinobis said, expressing gratitude to whoever had fed them. Everyone started eating. "Now that the sun is up, I can travel easier now," Itachi replied. His Edo Tensei body had the advantage of giving him limitless chakra and allowing him to go about his merry way without needing to rest. Kabuto was impressed by these benefits in building an army of the undead. Later, Itachi used Izanami on Kabuto, and his eye partially recovered. Now he could see through both opticals without missing a detail. He continued to scan the area with his Sharingan. Itachi decided to go there after thinking to himself, a wall at least 1 kilometer from here, from the base of the tree. He could see that some people were taking notice of him during the day. The monsters became more active than at night. Seeing that he had no desire to stay with her any longer, he used his chakra enchanted speed to leap from tree to tree in order to quickly and covertly flee. He eventually arrived at the wall of epic proportions by the end of the next 20 minutes or so. He thought it was just huge. He quickly crossed the wall to get a close-up view of what lay beyond. Even though he saw a semblance of civilization, his eyes hardened at the sight. Empty. As he leapt down the wall to conduct more research, he thought, "This place reeks of death." He entered the ghost town, walking past corpses and bloodstains. He thought this was just gruesome. The streets were littered with broken foundation, indicating a panicked crowd. This did not sit well with him at all. At a very young age, Itachi was already familiar with the realities of war and death. His expansion of his perspectives beyond the curse of hatred was what set him apart from the other Uchihas. He consented to the Uchiha massacre for this reason. In comparison to many others, what are a few lives? But this was entirely different, and a little worse. He had already come to terms with the possibility that he would never return home, but he persisted in moving forward, choosing not to give up like Kabuto did after losing everything. Itachi went inside one of the many deserted houses to look for hints. As anticipated, the air was heavy with dust as Itachi rummaged through the personal possessions of the occupants among a few of the houses. His search turned up only a few dusty everyday housewares and some old photo albums. Itachi sighed, not a single book in sight. His search continued for a whole block in a forebodingly silent area. As he almost lost his balance while walking, he noticed something odd about the uneven ground. He glanced down and pondered for a while. Footprints, he pondered, huge human ones. The floor did indeed have enormous cracks and imprints, as though a giant had passed through. As he followed the path of devastation, he noticed that the footprints became deeper and more distinct, as though someone had started to accelerate. He deduced that the person who left these footprints was also in charge of the hole in the wall after noticing a broken gate to the wall. The idea that these monsters might be intelligent was what worried him the most. He entered the next house, thinking he should be more cautious. This house was equally as fruitless as the previous one. He was about to walk away when he heard a creak. Kriya thunk. Where the noise came from, A kunai was embedded with lightning-fast reaction even though Itachi was dead. He was starting to get a little paranoid. It was the door of a cabinet. Squeaking. A rat scampered out. Itachi let out a sigh. Clunk. Itachi glanced back and noticed a bundle tumble out of the cabinet. It was small, covered in a blanket, and motionless. Inquisitive, he moved slowly toward it. Reaching out and flipping it over. The sight of the small child's corpse made him grimace. He was still unable to forget the faces of the kids he killed during the Uchiha massacre. Unlike this child, who endured unnecessary suffering, he ensured that everyone died quickly and painlessly. As he raised the body into his arms, Itachi made the decision to bury the dead boy properly, but when he felt a bump on the corpse, something felt off. Itachi swiftly but cautiously removed the blanket from the weak figure, revealing that it was holding a book against its chest. Itachi's quest was ultimately successful. With an apologetic, "Forgive me," he set the dead child down and removed the book from him. He set the book down on a nearby table and looked at the cover. The title, "The Three Walls," he said out loud. Although the book itself was quite old and moldy, the text was still readable, so it was sufficient. He read a few excerpts of significant events using his Sharingan as he turned the pages, paying close attention to every detail. In the year 743, mankind faced a new enemy called the Titans, giant beings that towered over buildings and that consumed humans. They had suddenly appeared in great numbers. Humanity became overwhelmed. Nothing we did could have killed them until the invention of the 3D maneuver gear. The small amount of survivors then barricaded themselves within the three great walls. Maria, Rose, and Sina from their humanity prospered. Intrigued by the history of this world and its inhabitants, Itachi kept reading as he turned through the books. He thought, they lived in fear of the Titans, so to be confined like a bird was humiliating. As Itachi scanned the texts, something suddenly dropped out of the pages. He took it up. A booklet? As he started looking through its contents, Itachi pondered. The 21st of March 844. I look forward to the Scouting Legion returning home from their adventures in the outside world every day. What's it like out there, I wonder. August 3rd 844. Big Bro's squad in the military finally graduated. He declares that he is going to join the Scouting Legion. One hope to be like him when I'm older. December 23rd 844. Christmas Day is quickly approaching when Big Bro is off duty for the holidays. Mom, Dad, and I can't wait to see him again. I'm always here to lift his spirits when he comes home feeling a little down. The 14th of February 845. Dad died. When Big Bro returns home, he will be depressed now. Mom has to put in more effort to care for me. Itachi saw that the current page was stained with dried tears, but he continued to read. The 24th of March 845. Big Bro joined the Scouting Legion more than a year ago. He became upset with me when I told him that I wanted to live with him when I grew up. However, he assured me that he would never abandon me if I did, knowing that he will be by my side forever. Now makes me happy. I will bid him farewell to his next journey. April 2nd 845. Itachi saw that the ink was smudged and overwritten, and the page was literally covered in dried tears. There was only one sentence that could be read, and it was scrawled rather than written. Big Bro, you lied to me. Itachi did a good job of understanding the message of what transpired. May 5th 845. Itachi started to notice that the handwriting appeared to be written quickly. Outside, I heard a loud crash. I became frightened when the ground began to tremble. I'm by myself because Mom isn't home. I'm hiding, just like my mother would advise me to do in the event of a crisis. She always comes to pick me up. I just need to wait for my mother to come and get me. The page was filled with more dried tears. She's returning. Mom never forgets me. Itachi tried to read the final few faintly written sentences. Squinting, he used his Sharingan to decipher it. Every word was arranged in an extremely disorganized manner. Farewell, cruel world. That was it. He never even made it to the end. Itachi took the small corpse outside to the backyard of the house and snapped the booklet shut. He dug a temporary grave with a nearby shovel. He finally laid the corpse to rest by carefully placing it in the ground as a grave marker. He planted a wooden post. He took out his kunai and wrote just 2 words on the post: little brother. Itachi leapt atop one of the tall buildings and fled the property. His eyes hardened and glowed red. Getting rid of Itachi requires a lot of work, but now he was at the top of his game when Itachi noticed a wandering titan walk by with an expression of unheard of pleasure on its face. He activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. Itachi was about to lose control. Susanoo. The afternoon was in the middle. The sun was high in the sky, and the meadow and everything else were illuminated by its brilliant light for the first time in days. Naruto was free to move around outside, and he inhaled deeply. Naruto exhaled. Ah! He smiled toothily. Naruto exclaimed with excitement, "Yosh, time to get back to training," as the other members of his group quickly followed. Levi informed everyone that their next expedition would take place in a month, so they should get ready. Moreover, Erwin has told me to inform you that he wants you 4 to join the Scouting Legion on a temporary term, Senior 4 want to go home as well. After considering this for a while, the shinobis decided to accept it. They would have time to consider how to return home while simultaneously assisting humanity in regaining what they lost to the Titans. Of course, why not? Levi turned to go. Alright, good, I'll inform Erwin right away, he said. Please, once more, do not do anything too drastic. Naruto blew a raspberry and stuck his tongue out at Levi as soon as he was out of sight. Baka Haichu. HMPH, do not do anything too drastic, Naruto scoffed. Naruto has been disliking the captain since yesterday because of his moody manner, which just irritated him. He's trying to look more like a fool by acting all cool and stuff reminded him too much of Sasuke. But only because the captain was more concerned. Before long, Naruto received a blow to the back of his head. With a childlike admonition, Petra told him, don't you dare badmouth the captain. As he attended to the stinging pain on his head, Naruto sulked. Kakashi walked up to Naruto with a frustrated shrug. Kakashi remarked, well, I suppose it's back to the old grind, in reference to training. As Naruto jumped out of his position and into the open field, his eyes widened. With a shout of, all right then, let's go, Naruto sprinted ahead of the others. Killer Bee said, I'll keep an eye on the Fulio, and then he left Kakashi, Guy, and the rest of Levi's group. As he continued to babble on about youth and other absurdities, Guy yelled, haha, Kakashi, my eternal rival. What challenge shall we do today? You are 1 point ahead of me in the total amount of the challenges. What the hell is up with him? Levi's squad merely observed this man. They all pondered as they quickly felt sorry for Kakashi after witnessing the occasional ordeal he endures. However, Hanji's arrival quickly distracted everyone. Hanji yelled excitedly, hello everyone, Eren, as well, and what's wrong with her? Gunter said, hello squad leader Hanji, in response, is there something you need? Her eyes brightened. She practically drooled at the thought of her experiments. Yes, I'm going to have to borrow Eren and his Titan powers, she explained. Come along now, she exclaimed with joy as she took Eren's hand and pulled him away. She was followed by the rest of the squad, who stood guard over Eren. Kakashi pointed his thumb in their general direction and remarked, maybe next time, Guy, we should follow suit and go along with them. Yosh, Guy exclaimed as they trailed behind the group. In order to start their training, Naruto and Bee traveled to an open meadow devoid of any occupants, but Naruto suddenly stopped, perplexing Killer Bee. Naruto yelled, that's it, I got it, as a realization dawned on him. What is it, ya fool? Said Killer Bee as he bit his finger and drew blood. Naruto exclaimed with excitement, I got a way to get back home. The Toad Sages could reverse summon us. Kachiyose no Jutsu. A huge puff of smoke burst from the meadow, revealing a giant toad nearly the size of the wall, smoking a giant cigarette and brandishing a sheathed tanto. And you are? Asked Naruto, perplexed as to why he hadn't called forth Gamabunta. The toad said, it's me, Naruto. With some confusion, Naruto exclaimed, Gamakichi. Surprised? The arrogant toad asked. Surprised is an understatement, and I thought Akamaru's growth spurt was shocking? Well, it's not my fault you humans grow so slowly, he replied. Well, what you need? Naruto asked, Gamakichi, how come the Toad Sages realized I wasn't gone? You were gone. Last time we checked for your chakra signature was 8 hours ago, Gamakichi said, making this startling admission. Naruto exclaimed, 8 hours? We were stuck here for 4 days, Naruto begged. You have to persuade the elders to reverse summon us. He said, all right, but you know how slow they're up on these kinds of things, which made Naruto think of the Toad Elder and his tendency to forget things. Naruto exclaimed frantically, we're gonna be stuck here for years at this rate. But since you're my friend, I suppose I can put in a word and speed things up a bit, said Gamakichi. Naruto let out a sigh of relief. However, the process will still take a week or so tops. You'll probably still be stuck here for over a month or two, Gamakichi stated. Naruto scowled. But you know we have a war going on, we don't have time. Madara will stop at nothing to rule the world. Yeah, but news says that Madara Guy disappeared from the battlefield a little while ago, according to our sources. Knowing that Madara was lurking and could attack at any time caused Naruto to feel uneasy. He let out a sigh. Naruto said, alright, thanks for your help, I'll keep summoning you every so often, as he turned away from Gamakichi and returned to Killer Bee. Bee heard the entire conversation and rapped, lost in time, and all I can do is make up some rhymes. Kanoyaro Bakayaro. Hey Bee, might as well make use of your time to prepare yourself. And Naruto, knowing Madara, it is unsettling that he suddenly disappeared and went off the radar like that. It is a possibility he will look for us, said Gyuki grimly. A fresh voice said, I agree for once, Kurama said, My idiot of a host should begin to perfect his tailed beast state knowing we have only transformed once, lasting only for minutes, while he unconsciously established a telepathic connection with B and Yuki. No need to say another word, Naruto said with a smile while he put on his Kyuubi chakra cloak. Naruto looked past Wall Rose into the distance, his face wide with surprise. B said, "What's wrong?" Naruto whispered, "This chakra, I can feel it so familiar it can't be." "Whose?" There was silence as the shinobis rushed past the wall and into the distance. The cannon maintenance crew and garrisons stood idly atop Wall Rose, watching for any trouble, and it was just another day. A monster's roars have been heard in the distance since this morning. Although many thought it might be a titan, it felt more strange and distinct from the others. Abruptly, a white flash and a yellow flash flew by. A fresh voice shouted, "Pardon me. Outa of the way, Dabbeo." He hurried from his position to the shinobis, and one of the garrisons recognized them, but when the two leapt off the wall and into the horizon, it was already too late. The man shouted, "Get back here, you two. It's not safe," not understanding that these two were entering the realm of titans who was going to report all of this, not that he would be concerned for them. For the first time in years, Itachi felt lustful for blood given that he was in a foreign world with no means of returning home. Why had he continued to exist? As he used his Totsuka blade to cut a titan to pieces, he realized that this was far more difficult than he had initially expected. He went on a rampage with his Susanoo for almost the whole night he was traveling, tearing apart numerous titans with its savage battle cry. One more benefit of Edo Tensei: access to an endless supply of chakra, unrelenting stamina, and the ability to disregard everyday needs like sleep. Itachi killed 2 more titans from behind, proving that he was a true killing machine. They were incredibly numerous, but Itachi had no idea where they were all coming from. Somehow, they sensed drawn in. He flared his Susanoo at him. One titan of the 4-meter class came up behind Itachi's Susanoo and was fortunate to sink its teeth into the skeletal hand. Its teeth merely broke apart, but the ethereal warrior's hand was quickly swatted away and smashed into the ground with its head before it could even crack it. As he watched the titan in front of him regenerate its freshly smashed head, Itachi observed that these monsters appeared to simply heal whatever wounds they sustain, even going so far as to regenerate lost limbs and other injuries. He struck the titan with Susanoo's fist once more, destroying its entire body from the waist up. As its corpse began to dematerialize into the air, it finally stopped moving. As he committed the number of monsters he had slain to memory, Itachi thought, "That makes 259. He wandered aimlessly through the forests in Wall Maria, thinking that the hordes would never end. He was particularly intrigued by the titans who stood out from the others in contrast to their peers. They appeared normal, but their behavior was abstract. Itachi scanned the area with his Sharingan, passing a few of those in the forest as though it were frogs. One sprang at him with tremendous speed, and another hid shyly behind a tree. Compared to the other titans, who at least walked or ran, it was highly unusual. However, these were erratic in their behavior. Itachi thought, "I feel sorry for those who must endure the atrocities of these creatures." "Oi brat?" Naruto asked Kurama. "What? This is taking a bit long getting to where you want to go." Kurama replied, "Speed up things by going full Biju transformation. At least get some more practice in a place where no one else can see you." Naruto grinned. "All right," he said, clasping his palms together as golden energy burst from his body, transforming him into a giant golden fox. Knowing he wouldn't be able to keep up with Naruto's transformation, B simply held onto the Kyuubi's back as it sped faster toward their destination. As they all ran into the horizon, B exclaimed, "Aw yeah! Full speed ahead," with joy, realizing that his lessons had finally paid off in aiding Naruto. Itachi was using his Susanoo to ward off these monsters with ease, simply slashing them in vertical halves or beheading them. A handful of them managed to recover from the assault, but they were swiftly eliminated by being absorbed into Itachi's Totsuka blade. Itachi was getting ready again when 3 more titans appeared from the trees and approached him slowly. His Susanoo was covered in blood, which just evaporated like all titan blood. The titans would soon be within striking distance, but then... Quote exclamation mark question mark quote. This feeling, no, it's chakra, Itachi shouted to himself before experiencing a sudden surge nearby. But he wasn't the only one who noticed this. Titans reacted by turning in the same direction. A glint of some kind briefly appeared in their eyes as they turned away from Itachi and ran frantically in that direction. Itachi muttered, "It can't be," before launching himself at full speed as well. Naruto was about to scream, "What the fu?" when a titan of the 15-meter class leapt onto him and grabbed his right Kyuubi arm. Naruto swiftly tore the titan off, crushed it in his hand, and flung its remnants into the air. "Naruto!" B exclaimed, gesturing toward the distance. His eyes widened in surprise, and Naruto followed where his finger led. He had a whole horde of titans running frantically to get to him, but as it swatted away titans left and right, something appeared to be in the center of the horde at last. The enigmatic creature appeared up front, glowing orange-red and brandishing a sword and an ethereal shield. Itachi was the one. Naruto shouted, "Itachi," as he headed toward the swarm of titans, determined to support his friend. When Itachi leapt high into the air and landed on Naruto's Kyuubi head, he exclaimed, "Naruto." The three quickly left the titans far behind and headed back to Wall Rose at full speed. Once more as they caught a glimpse of the massive wall, Naruto's Kyuubi form began to dematerialize. Naruto apologized, understanding that the titans would eventually catch up at this rate. "We can't alarm the locals for now. We will have to run the rest of the way, guys," he said. Already, the first one was running toward them and catching up. As he moved chakra to his feet and sped away from the titans once more, Naruto exclaimed, "There's the wall. Let's climb it quick." One garrison squad leader heard an enigmatic rumbling and said to his friends, "Hey guys, do you hear that?" He listened to the vibrations by placing his head against the table. This man had just survived the incident in the Trost district and was a squad leader. Despite all the odds, he bravely battled the titans and was fortunate to survive. He was one of the few men to return alive, as a significant portion of his squad perished. But for him, things were still not improving. He kept having nightmares about his allies being devoured in a bloody mess after they fell at the hands of the titans every night. He would wake up screaming uncontrollably as he relived these nightmares. His loved ones offered to help, but he flatly turned them down, claiming that he is a soldier and would not break easily. He had been growing increasingly paranoid ever since the rumors of spies and titans inside the walls began to circulate. Not to mention enigmatic men who appeared out of nowhere and began performing magic tricks everywhere. Although he was grateful for their assistance, he had been under a lot of stress and strain ever since he had to put in endless work as a squad leader and a recent promotion a few days ago. He started to become paranoid, living in constant fear and distrusting his surroundings. Post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms were starting to appear. "Rumble, rumble, rumble," he told his friends. "What the? I only heard this kind of noise and only once." As he stormed out of his office door and scaled the wall with his 3D maneuver gear, he exclaimed, "A swarm of them are approaching the wall." Other soldiers were gazing at the horizon as he reached the summit. "What's the situation?" he asked, his red, haggard eyes fixed on a random soldier. Now he was under a lot of stress. "Titans are approaching our vicinity at a surpassingly fast pace, sir." After a brief moment of grimacing, the squad leader gave another command. He shouted, "Man the cannons, prepare to fire." As they loaded round after round into the heavy artillery, the soldiers rushed to their battle stations. They were waiting for them, their eyes fixed on the horizon. It took them a good minute to reach the target. "Fire!" shouted the squad leader. Boom, boom, boom. Heavy balls of metal explosives tore through the titans, killing many of them, and loud thundering sounds of cannon fire filled the area. They had no idea that there were other people down there besides titans. A soft whistling sound approached the three of them as they hurried to the wall beside Itachi. Something exploded out of nowhere. Boom! By the time Naruto realized what had happened, Itachi's arm was torn and the titans were being fired upon by the men on the wall. Itachi reminded him of his conditional arm that was beginning to regenerate. "Naruto, worry about yourself for now. I'm still an Edo Tensei. I won't die," Itachi said. As he prioritized his own safety and made sure he wasn't struck by a stray artillery round, Naruto nodded in agreement. When they eventually arrived at the wall with the titans in tow, they were able to pass by with little difficulty despite the explosives slowing them down a little while they were running. By applying chakra to their feet and adhering to its vertical surface, they started to climb the wall. One soldier loaded a cannon and yelled, "We need some more ammo." Another exclaimed, "I'm on it," as he sped back to the loading station along the tracks of the portable cannon. But regrettably, he was tripped during his run that day due to a loose bolt. He cried out, "Oh shit," as he stumbled and rolled over the edge, falling to the opposite side of the wall. Unable to maintain his balance in an attempt to stop his free fall, he quickly tried to activate his 3D maneuver gear and hang steady on the wall. Click click. What? When he realized that his equipment was simply jammed on him, his eyes grew horrified. The complex device must have been jammed. When a loose part sprung from his fall, he became aware that his death was imminent. The titans were starting to swarm up against the tall walls, and even if he managed to survive the fall, he would be abandoned and devoured by them. He closed his eyes, prepared to accept his destiny. A few soldiers have occasionally experienced this. He was merely one of the unfortunate individuals. Alarmed that he wasn't using his equipment to get back up, his friends could only watch. A few leapt off to save him, but they were unable to use their working 3D equipment to save him while maintaining a safe distance from the titans. The man thought it was a titan, and felt a tight grip encircling his body. He closed his eyes more tightly and winced, anticipating his bloody demise, but nothing arrived. "Hey! Open your eyes." The man wondered what had happened and why he was still alive. Who said that? He pondered. He turned to see that he was once more atop the wall, but his fellow soldiers were staring at him in horror. But why? When he attempted to move his limbs, he found that they remained immobile. He looked around and saw a red glowing hand clutching his body. Now in a panic, he tried to wriggle out and gasped, but the enormous hand let go of him and dropped him indiscriminately onto the wall. The ground took some of the wind out of him, and he landed with a thud. He said, turning to see three figures at the wall's edge. One had raven hair and a red cloak. He identified the other two as Killer Bee and Naruto based on their descriptions in the newspaper. He was truly taken aback by what was behind the three of them. It was a roughly 10-meter-tall humanoid creature that exuded an orange and red aura. It had 4 enormous arms that hung loosely on its side, and its eyes were glowing yellow. Although it looked a lot like a titan, it was actually a little more menacing. It just vanished, and then it began to scatter in the air. Everyone was perplexed, believing the newcomer to be a titan shifter similar to Eren. The squad leader was trembling at the location, staring at Itachi with intense fear and rage. He observed what had transpired while climbing the wall. The man summoned the titan-like beast, catching the falling man in the process. He just existed. It didn't matter what he had done. That was sufficient justification for the terrified squad leader to act. Fearfully, he thought, another titan shifter. You can't trust any of them. Everyone is hiding in terror, imprisoned like birds in cages. Because of them, they have betrayed humanity. Again, his paranoia was overwhelming him. He started to perspire and his heart rate quickened. He pulled an object out of his holster. "Stop right there," he screamed, gesturing to Itachi with a musket as they attempted to soothe him. Everyone gasped at what he had done. "Don't you dare fucking move." Itachi moved forward, closing his eyes calmly. "I said stop, I'm warning you," the squad leader shouted again as Itachi approached. As he approached, the shinobi's sandals clattered with each step. The man already had a high degree of fear and paranoia. He now had to use both hands to hold the musket steady, and his hand began to shake, making it difficult to hold it still. His breathing became irregular. "Ah!" he exclaimed. Pop! The raven-haired ninja was struck by the musket's round metal discharge. There was silence while the other shinobis calmly watched. The soldiers were shocked by what their squad leader had done. Itachi's head shook back as the musket ball tore through his skull, leaving a sizable hole in it. Although he did not fall, Edo Tensei began to take effect as the entry hole began to close. He looked intently into the man's red, glowing eyes and said, "Sorry to disappoint, but..." Itachi applied a basic genjutsu to him and said, "I'm already dead." The man collapsed onto the ground, unconscious, and his pupils widened to find out what was wrong with him. His allies hurried to him. "No need to panic," said the ninja with raven hair. "I simply helped ease his mental state. He had been suffering for quite a bit." The squad leader's face, which appeared to be much more calm and relaxed, caught everyone's attention. He was no longer yelling or having sudden outbursts while sleeping. He was replaced by the second in command. He gave the order, "All right, transport him to the infirmary," as soldiers pulled out a stretcher, carefully laid him on it, and carried him away. The remaining titans had just been eliminated by the cannon squads, leaving only a smaller, more scattered group that won't be a major threat. By this point, everything had essentially returned to normal. Soldiers cleaning, talking, and patrolling the walls. In all of this chaos, only the 3 shinobis were able to distinguish themselves when they saw a new figure leaning on a nearby cannon. The man was rather short, and his black hair was combed over on both sides and parted on the right side of his head. "Didn't I say not to do anything too drastic?" he asked icily. "You caused another commotion with those cannon fire." When Naruto recognized it as Captain Levi, he gave a silly smile. He gestured to Itachi, who was standing behind him, and said, "We had a good reason to." Levi gazed at Itachi, who returned the look as they attempted to read one another, their eyes locked. There was a brief period of silence before Levi spoke. He turned away from the group and remarked, "HMPH, whatever, just another thing for me to report to Erwin." Using his 3D equipment, he lowered himself from the wall and mounted his horse, saying, "Let's go, Hanji is waiting for us." The shinobis followed Levi, who was now galloping off on his horse, as they leapt off the wall and landed softly. Hanji, eager to get the experiment underway, said nervously, "Ah, they should be here any time now." Kakashi gazed at this woman, examining her motivations, appearance, and character. "Let's check this out." Enamored of Titans, no special interest in other pastimes, Kakashi grimaced whenever he approached her, saying, "And obviously doesn't wash her hair often." Given that he had a nose that was nearly dog-like, the odor was rather annoying. Guy was talking about the strength of youth and how it would make you 10 times stronger. With the rest of Levi's group, they gazed incredulously at the ninjas dressed in green. They believed Guy was past his prime and wondered why he had so much energy for such an old man. They were completely mistaken. The door opened abruptly, and Levi entered. "We've all arrived." Naruto rushed through the door to find his sensei panting in frustration. "Kakashi-sensei. Guess who we found?" he exclaimed as, much to his dismay, he dragged the shinobi's masked Cyclops out the door, but his eyes widened in surprise as he stepped outside. He never would have imagined that he would see that man again. "Hello, Kakashi-san." "Hello, Itachi-kun." Everyone started to go outside, curious about what was happening. The tone of Guy's youthfulness abruptly changed to one of seriousness. He assumed his combat stance and yelled, "My friends, stay back. This man is dangerous." Kakashi said, "No, Guy, he is our ally now," and Guy's expression brightened with relief and confusion. Everyone didn't understand what was happening, or did they overlook a memo? Eren gazed at the man with the raven hair. He rummaged through his memories and found something familiar. Ah, he looks a lot like Mikasa, which is frightening. He wondered if there were more of him. Who is this jerk? Oluo thought while maintaining a Levi-like expression. It must be one of them, Eld and Gunter thought. He looks pretty good. No, Petra blushed as she thought. I can't imagine such things. She does have a certain admiration for a captain, after all. Itachi placed a hand on Kakashi's shoulder and walked away from the group. He remarked, "We have much to discuss." Hanji nodded when he said, "We'll be back in time for the experiment." They all returned inside to talk about their plans. "I have come up with a method that shall allow us to beat you to half to death without killing you," Levi replied with a smile. "Huh?" Eren asked in a bewildered tone. Levi started writing on a chalkboard nearby. He drew a diagram of the anatomy of the Titan neck on the board and said, "I said previously that the only way to stop you in your Titan form was to kill you." The diagram was completed by him. "But with this method, you can just get away with serious injuries," he said. He went on to say, "It will be tricky though, as it requires extremely refined skills to execute," adding that in order to remove the Titan, they would need to cut off a slab of meat from his neck. "We'll end up chopping off your hands and feet in the process though." This suggestion was criticized by both Naruto and Eren. Wait a moment, please. "No big deal, you'll grow them back like a damn lizard or something," he said. "Gross." After it was decided that Hanji would be carrying out the experiment plans, the group continued to discuss their strategy. "Don't worry, Eren, if there's something you don't know, then learn it. There's plenty of what we can learn risking our lives for," she replied. Itachi muttered, "So that's what happened," following Kakashi's succinct explanation of the events and additional details about this world. Kakashi answered quite gravely, "Yeah, no doubt, they'll be looking for us." Concern over Madara's presence in this world started to grow in both of them. "It's bad enough Madara threw our world into turmoil. We can't let his hatred spread here. They have their own problems at hand. Madara will just become their end instead," Kakashi said, and Itachi concurred for the omen to appear. Both will now need to be more vigilant to ensure the safety of their new friends. They had to depart as soon as possible. They will, however, keep quiet for the time being so as not to arouse fear of a danger bigger than the Titans. As they watched Eren being lowered into an emptying well, they quickly went back and rejoined their group, arriving in time for the experiment. Hanji shouted into the well, "When I'm ready, I'll give you a smoke signal to begin," to Eren. "What you do next is up to you." "Understood," exclaimed Eren in response. Hanji blew a smoke signal into the air as the group moved away from the well at a reasonable distance. Eren thought to himself, "The signal," as he watched it take off. When Kakashi and Itachi showed up, Levi asked idly, "You two had your nice little catching up?" Levi gave Kakashi a HN for his response. Just a few matters discussed, nothing more. The signal was sent out, but nothing happened for a few moments. Hanji questioned what was wrong, saying, "Maybe he didn't see the signal?" Levi insisted, "He saw it. We can't be certain if something happened there or not." They headed back to the well. "Eren, the experiment is to be suspended for the time being," exclaimed Hanji. She looked down the well and asked, "Did you manage something?" before her face changed to one of surprise. Eren said, "Hanji-san, it seems I can't turn into a Titan," as blood poured from his mouth and self-inflicted wounds. After bringing Eren back up onto the surface by lowering the ladder, the group took a tea break and attended to his hand wound, which was now healing. Each group had its own table set up. They all sat with a cup of tea or coffee, one for Levi's team and one for the shinobis. Despite his Edo Tensei form, Itachi carefully eyed his drink, debating whether or not to take a sip since he is technically a zombie. he was primarily considering whether he would swallow it or if it would simply flow through his body and spill to the ground. Choices. Eren gazed at his hand, which was bandaged. Your self-inflicted wound when you bit your hand still hasn't closed up yet, replied Levi. And Eren said, no, if you lose your ability to turn into a titan, the ambition to plug the breach in Wall Maria, riding on it, will also go down the fucking drain. Levi grumbled. I'm ordering you. Do something about it. Yes, sir, Eren replied as the captain turned away and started talking to Petra while sipping his coffee. Eld said, hey, don't feel so down, but. As Oluo said, ah well, it just means you're more human than we thought. It is much better this way than losing your life because of all this rush. It isn't all in vain. Gunter responded, yeah, you can never be too cautious. Eren was perplexed. Why don't the senpais express disappointment over my failure? Eren pondered. Even though they are aware that everyone will be in serious trouble if I lose my ability to transform into a titan? Eren was getting his teaspoon. He dropped the spoon and winced at a sharp pain in his hand. Ow. A worried Eld asked, are you okay? Eren said, yeah, I'm fine, as he started to pick up his dropped spoon that was lying on the floor. Itachi saw this and chose to be polite, standing an arm's length away on the other table. He said, allow me, and he also leaned down for the spoon. No, it's fine, I got it. Itachi already had the spoon in his hand, but it was too late because he wanted to get there before the raven-haired ninja. Eren sprang forward as quickly as he could just a moment ago. Crack sh. Eren's table was blown away along with Gunter, Oluo, and Eld, and a yellow lightning bolt sped down from the sky onto him except for Itachi, who held his ground. The ninjas leapt away in time to avoid the majority of the blast since no one could see. Smoke pervaded the surrounding area. The idea made Petra and Levi's eyes widen. They had not anticipated this happening at this particular moment. As other scouts wondered what had happened, the smoke finally cleared. Everyone's eyes went wide with surprise. Eren was the first to draw notice because his arm was trapped in a mass of titan meat that resembled a giant arm and half a small rib cage. However, the way it was positioned gave the impression that it was attempting to reach out and seize something, but the second figure, which had never been seen before, was equally enigmatic and startling. Eren's titan arm was being held back by the wrist of a skeletal arm that radiated a red glow. Eren strained even harder to free his paralyzed arm. He shouted, why now? He turned to see Levi standing in front of him with his back to the crowd. They formed a defensive line around Eren, and the shinobis joined Levi. Itachi stayed, using his skeletal arm to secure his titan arm. Eren said, whoa, are you a titan shifter too? Itachi gave a headshake. Levi tried to calm everyone down by saying, everyone, calm down. Everyone's eyes were on Eren. They all had the same expression, one filled with fear and hatred as they held them in a lethal manner. Their blades flashed. His allies quickly changed their opinions of him and started questioning his faith in humanity. To the whole audience, Levi repeated, I said calm down. At that moment, footsteps were heard, and it was discovered that Hanji and her subordinates were emerging from the forest, curious about the reason for the commotion. What's going on? What was that sound? As Hanji looked at what was before her, her eyes brightened with anticipation. Hua! Oh yes SS! She exclaimed. With a joyful jump she sprinted in Eren's direction. As his senpais persisted in doubting his loyalty, Eren, who was growing increasingly irritated, continued to take a beating. Will everyone just shut up for a minute? He demanded. Everyone winced. Suddenly, Hanji ran to Eren with a crazy expression and shoved Gunter aside. Eren! Can I touch that arm of yours? Wait a moment. Can I? You'll let me, right? I'll just touch it, that's all, I promise. She started probing the arm everywhere, and everyone stared at her as though she were crazy. Whoa! It's hot. That arm, skinless yet so hot, she exclaimed as she leapt back, hurting and thrilled at the same time. One soldier remarked, Squad leader, you're too reckless for your own good. Then, at last, she noticed Susanoo from Itachi as she leapt from her position and lunged at his skeletal-like arms. Her interest peaked again. With excitement, she inquired, I've never seen a titan structure like this before. Are you a titan shifter too? No, he quickly replied before scattering his Susanoo, causing Hanji to collapse to the ground as she turned to face him in disappointment. As he fell back, Eren, who had been attempting to remove his arm from the titan structure's mass, succeeded in doing so and also fell flat on the ground. The titan portion began to vanish and evaporate. As her opportunity to conduct some research vanished, Hanji cried out in horror, No, Eren! Why did you have to go and do that? There was so much I wanted to read. When she finally noticed a tiny object in the titan's fingers, she stopped talking. A teaspoon. After hours, everything was finally cleaned up, and everyone else went back to the barracks to rest. The group went back to the base of their castle. Nations of Elementals. Orochimaru pulled himself out of a snake that Anko had created using a curse mark, saying, "Fu fu fu fu, out of all people, I never expected you to be the one to revive me, Sasuke-kun." They all started talking about the war, which Orochimaru declared he didn't want to be involved in. Sasuke gave the secret scroll to Orochimaru after taking it out of his pocket. He said, "What do you want to see them for?" Sasuke answered, "I don't know everything, I want to hear it from them." "Know everything? Oh, but you're still but a child, you don't need to know such things." Recalling Itachi's departure into another realm, he shot back, "Wrong," realizing that there was nothing he could do. He questioned his actions from the start and what path he should have taken, saying, "I'm no child, I can't be one anymore." He wanted to know everything before deciding, even though he wasn't exactly planning revenge. Orochimaru said, Fine, I'll assist you, follow me." "Where to?" He laughed menacingly, "Fu fu fu, a place you know well. Come, let's go." Scouting the Legion Castle. Levi was leaning against the wall beside Eren, who was slumped on a set of stone stairs. Neither of them said anything. Everyone was starting to feel more uneasy around Eren since his unintentional metamorphosis. Eren let out a sigh. "I know that I'm still alive only because I'm here. I also know that I'm a potential threat to humanity. It's just until the moment I experienced their open hostility, I didn't notice that they don't trust me," he said gloomily. Levi gazed boredly at the wall. "Of course they don't, that's why I chose them in the first place," he replied. Meanwhile, shinobis and members of the special squad were talking to each other in the adjacent room. As he approached Itachi's personal area, Oluo smirked and said, "So you guys, how many titans you think you can take out?" Now that he was acclimating to the way things operated down here, Itachi was finally starting to feel at ease. Nonetheless, he couldn't help but feel empty and frigid inside. It must be the Edo Tensei, he thought, dismissing the sensation. Itachi gave a direct response to the question, saying, "I will not think on what could happen, but rather will do what must be done." Oluo sneered and went on to boast about how many kills he had made on his own, without assistance. "Fey smart ass, aren't ya?" He asked. Everyone simply ignored his incessant boasting and concentrated primarily on their responsibilities and teamwork. Eld addressed the now mildly intrigued shinobis, saying, "Well, since we'll be working with each other for a while now, I hope you guys don't mind telling us more about yourself now that we're acquainted." As Petra, who happened to be seated next to him, attempted to sneak a peek, Kakashi read from his signature orange book and asked, "What is it that you would like to know?" As the rest of the room fell silent, Eld questioned suspiciously, "Well, for starters, your strange abilities, conjuring up beasts, manipulation of elements, lightning, quick movements, are you even human?" "Like I said, we're shinobis, ones that protect and serve in the shadows, those who endure." Eld said, a little irritated, "That still doesn't explain what you were and how it is done." To Petra's dismay, Kakashi abruptly closed his book, realizing that it would take some time to explain. "To make things simple, we are ninjas, assassins for hire," he stated plainly. As soon as the special squad was informed that these men were willing to take money to kill someone without hesitation, the room fell silent again. They saw this as a horror to humanity, since they knew that since the Titans controlled their lives, they had no right to fight among themselves. Even though it was nothing new, it felt off. Petra asked grimly, How much blood stain your hands?" With a hint of guilt already visible in his eyes, he looked at Itachi and said, "Between all of us, too many to count." Itachi obviously never enjoyed thinking back on that fateful night, but the past always finds a way to come back to haunt him. With a serious tone, Petra questioned, "Then why do you choose that path? Knowing you would bear the burden of guilt for the rest of your life, why?" "There are things we all need to protect. Our home is a place riddled with constant conflicts where peace only reigned for short times before we send off boys no older than 13 off into war without those to fight. The ones we love and cherish most will disappear. That is why most became shinobis during my time. We are all soldiers." Kakashi clarified to everyone who was listening intently. "We are the ones who endure." Eld grinned. "It's good to know we are on the same page here. You fight to protect the ones you love most, while we fight to protect humanity and its well-being from the Titans. To guarantee a future where our children will no longer live in fear of going outside, mankind will not falter," he said with pride. "To be clear, we do not only take up assassinations but a variety of other jobs too, ranging from diplomacy, protection for escorts, to being simply chore boys such as painting a wall or something," Kakashi continued. As everyone else nodded, Eld laughed and said, "Haha, to end that on a good note, I know that I can finally trust you with my life, as you will do the same for me." His tone became slightly more serious as he admitted, However, the difference in our power is frighteningly great, whereas a few titans is enough of a challenge to handle alone. You guys make it look too easy, I admit. What is your strange powers to be exact? He inquired. You already know our strategics of optimizing our technology and wits to our advantage against the titans, but you have yet to explain exactly what is yours, he continued. Kakashi gave his head a scratch. Well, it is pretty basic knowledge back home, but, he said, pausing in the middle of his statement as he could already see their curious eyes glinting. The shinobis looked at one another, deciding whether or not to share their chakra knowledge. Their world became even more divided as a result of the art itself. What disastrous situation might this knowledge lead to in this case? They all pondered. They all nodded slowly but reluctantly as Itachi turned to face them, understanding that since they were cut off from their world, nothing could be done back home. Itachi merely uttered, "Chakra." "Chakwa?" Uluo asked in a bewildered manner. Everyone else thought, "Chakra?" as the word kept coming back to them, as if they were trying to recall the last time they had heard of it. However, this unfamiliar word did not come to mind. As the rest of the squad gazed at Itachi expectantly for a response, Gunter questioned, "What's that?" Even though the lectures were dull, Itachi began to recall what his teacher would always say in class. As he reflected on his time at the academy, he inhaled deeply. Chakra. A life force consisting of both physical and spiritual energy that can be channeled at will using hand seals and such to perform various techniques, whether it may be manipulating the elements to your will or simply defying logic itself. They flows through an entire system throughout your body through nodes called tenketsus, in which consists of 361 of them. To master such energy takes rigorous and rather taxing exercises, training sessions. In addition, your chakra is also a life force of your body. You run out, you die, as he demonstrated by making a cage bushin next to himself. He somewhat astonished the team because they were afraid of what the raven-haired shinobi might do to them if they poked and prodded the newly created figure. They avoided doing so. Petra questioned, "So can such things be taught?" Knowing the repercussions of answering that question, Kakashi secretly feared it. The squad's eyes brightened slightly as he replied, "Yes, however, we will have to think about it if you're asking us to do so," he continued. Eld inquired, "Well, what for exactly?" Kakashi let out a sigh. He begged, knowing that the latter would be a little let down. "I have already explained once that ninjutsu brought our world into deeper conflict. I do not know what effect it will have on yours as well. Please understand our position here." As everyone turned to see Levi and Eren had just entered the room, a new voice said, "It won't be your secret arts that will be the downfall of humanity, but rather the fight amongst ourselves. Our strength comes from our determination and hearts," he said, gesturing with his thumb to his chest. "That is what drives us to defeat the titans and reconquer our homes, despite knowing what little chance we have." Knowing that he seldom offered moral support, his teammates uttered the words, "Haichu." "We couldn't help but eavesdrop on what you had to say, and frankly, I believe it is up to you whether you decide to help our world or not. Best rest assured humanity will triumph," he said before turning to everyone else. "Agreed," said Kakashi. "With the exception of Jiraiya, it isn't exactly typical for foreign shinobi to remain and instruct others, but the world needs as much assistance as possible," he thought. "I'll investigate this later. For now, I think it would be in your best interests if you focus your effort to help Eren maintain his control of his Titan powers," Kakashi told everyone. "But previous tries have already failed," Petra said. As Hanji waltzed into the room, a new voice said, "Well, actually, there may be a key to this." She shared this new information with everyone, saying, "Since Eren's accidental transformation, I have concluded that just biting himself won't trigger anything significant." As she began to remember all the times he did, she said, "Eren always had a purpose to transform when he wanted to. I want to kill the titans. Recently, I want to pick up the spoon. It is all connected to his purpose, and will not only that need has the desire to transform but a goal ahead of mind as well," she said. Kakashi couldn't help but smirk a little by now. He squinted at a specific Uchiha and said, "Wonderful, we have a man just for the job." Toby followed the ancient Uchiha to the next world to visit, trotting forward angrily. Their progress was astounding, and Toby had to invest a lot of time in it. However, no Madara appeared to be completely unconcerned. Everything seems to be proceeding as planned. Toby was certain that Madara was relishing every moment of this. However, compared to the real world, where an hour has hardly passed in real time, the Kamui dimension they were in did significantly slow down time. For days, Madara and Toby had been searching dimension after dimension and portal after portal, but the Jinchurikis had been unsuccessful. The masked man was growing increasingly irritated with Madara because she seemed too distant at the moment, and this was getting really tiresome for him. But as he approached the Gedo Mazo in his own domain, he thanked himself for considering this beforehand. Toby gave himself a mental pat on the back as he saw the Zetsus actually growing from white branches attached to the Gedo Mazo. using its chakra. I have created 5,000 more Zetsu clones to help aid in our search. But he recalled Yamato and thought, they won't be as strong as they were the first time, seeing I left behind that Mokuton user back at base. As Toby turned to see Madara arrive, she heard footsteps. When Madara saw that Toby was trying to expedite the process, she already sighed, "Obu, spoiling my fun already, kid." He remarked, "Being dead for years can change one's outlook on life, you know," as Toby started giving the newly formed Zetsus new goals while they were arranged in single file. You are all to divide into groups and search for the lost Jinchurikis throughout the dimensions. Do not under any circumstances reveal yourselves without good intentions to the new otherworldly natives, he said. You will report back to me your findings, understood? Each of them gave a nod. Good, be off with you all. They quickly organized into groups and began going through arbitrary portals. Seeing everything taken care of, Toby let out a sigh of relief. Soon after, he noticed Madara approaching another portal out of the corner of his eye, interrupting his blissful state of relaxation. Toby said menacingly, "Old man, what do you think you're doing?" A few steps from another dimensional rift, Madara came to a stop. "Did you honestly think I would sit around and twiddle my thumbs, waiting for things to get done? How boring," he responded. "If we're at least getting things done your way, I might as well enjoy the time I have then." Toby gave Madara a scowl. Madara's brows were also furrowed. "Oh, don't give me that look, Obito brat." The man in the mask balled his fists darkly. He uttered, "That name no longer holds any importance to me." Madara laughed. He walked up to the rift and said, "HMPH, whatever makes you feel better." Madara reflected on the past, saying, "The battle with the 5 cages left a bitter taste in my mouth. Not all shinobis are as strong as the ones back in the days." When he eventually passes through the portal, a new world awaits him to explore in pursuit of the Jinchurikis, but of course, seeing how things have gotten slightly peaceful is only expected. He says it's unfortunate that Hashirama is no longer with us. I think he could have kept up with me. Toby sighed again as he did the same. To help Madara, if he did manage to run into them, he didn't really need it, though both of them vanished from the Kamui realm. Leaning against a tree, Captain Levi watched 2 solitary individuals on the field alongside the shinobis and the rest of his squad. He chose to have some faith in the raven-haired ninja, even though it was his responsibility to keep an eye on Eren whenever he tried a transformation. His blades and 3D gear were still concealed in the cloak, ready to be used, but he was obviously not going to take any chances in case something did happen. Eren swallowed a little anxiously upon realizing that he was by himself with the crimson-cloaked shinobi. Was it Itachi? As his name came back to him, he did think the Uchiha looked oriental because he resembled Mikasa in certain ways, but he would prefer not to think about this later. They were probably not a part of this world and were not from around here. From where he came from, the notion of various dimensions is not very well liked. All they could think about was what they would eat next and whether they would live to see tomorrow. In any case, he shook his and jolted out of his reverie to confront Itachi again. Levi asked in a bored tone, "So what is it exactly that you are going to try and do exactly?" Kakashi closed his book and turned to face him. Concerning Levi's team, he stated, "I think the best way for young Eren to understand the concept of his transformation is to first start in the heat of battle." "Don't you think that's just a tad bit drastic? After all, he?" "No," Levi replied. "It may be the best option we have. Seeing we are doing this under a controlled environment, we will see this through. Just gotta have faith in them," he concluded. "If things don't work out, we'll just find another way. Simple as that." Petra turned back to the field where the 2 figures were standing in front of one another and uttered, "Hi Haichu." Kakashi said, "Don't worry, he'll go easy on him. What a bad boy." Eren wanted to know what was happening right now. He is alone with this guy while the rest of his squad and its leader went off to observe from a distance. "Hey, what do you think there?" Before he could finish speaking, Eren saw a fist fly in his direction. He slightly cocked his head, allowing the blow to pass off his skull. His senses ached sharply as he wondered why he would attack him out of the blue. In any case, he was regarded as one of the strongest members of his trainee squad back then, so fighting was his only area of expertise. With both fists raised to eye level, elbows down, and eyes narrowed, he slipped into a guard stance. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he screamed as he charged in, swinging in with a right hook and shielding his face with his left arm. "Not found, TCH," as he delivered a left straight punch, right hook, and left jab. Itachi just looked at him and swayed from side to side, easily avoiding the punches. As he positioned himself for a strong blow, Eren abruptly shuffled forward and managed to grab Itachi's right shoulder with his left arm. "Can't dodge this now," he exclaimed as he delivered a powerful right uppercut. At least this was going to make an impression, or so he believed. Pap Eren's eyes widened when he saw that his opponent had managed to deflect the blow. which had flown past his head and into the air. The shinobi landed his vault over Eren, flipped him over, grabbed the back of his collar, and launched him into the air with unimaginable speed. Eren skidded to a stop and landed harshly in the ground after rolling for a good 20 feet. Ouch! He winced, sensing that his face and hands were a little cut and scraped. Now that he knew he needed to be more cautious around him, he forced himself back up and slipped into his guard again. If I just swing at him at this rate, I'm going to exhaust myself. He stared into the man's crimson eyes and thought, it's like he knows my every move. Levi exclaimed, that's an impressive man you got there. He narrowed his eyes slightly and said, I was sure Eren was finally gonna land his first major blow to him. Petra remarked, somewhat impressed, yeah, it's almost as if he sees his every next move. The nin with gray hair clarified, that's because he can. With everyone else listening, Gunter questioned, oh, how interesting. Through what means is he doing that then? Itachi-kun is from a special family back from where I am from. They are known as the Uchihas, an elite warrior clan known for the great chakras and Kekai Genkai, explained Kakashi. He asked again, and what's this so-called Kekai Genkai? Kakashi said, it is his family's most famous and revered bloodline ability, as he exposed his scarred left eye by raising his headband. His crimson eye was exposed, the crimson pinwheel eye, the Sharingan, he said. Everyone entered to examine the renowned dojutsu in greater detail. 3 shapes revolving around a ring and an eye with a crimson iris. Levi and Hanji were the only ones who didn't change. Levi primarily because, as long as they were on the side of humanity, he didn't care what they actually pulled out of their bag of tricks. Hanji simply thought Titans were more fascinating than the latter. Curious, Petra said, so then are you Itachi's relative? If so, then why do you only have one? He put his headband back over his eye and turned back to the duel, saying, well, it's a long story but for another time. Itachi slammed his fist into Eren's stomach, knocking the wind out of him. As he spit air out of his body, he rose slowly again and fell back in agony. Why am I unable to get even one hit? He felt a mixture of annoyance and anger. Itachi stated, it is because I can see your future, failure. Eren's gaze expanded. How could he have read his mind? He gritted his teeth, glared at the raven-haired shinobi, and grimaced at the pain rocking his body. He cried out, what are you getting at? What is your goal? Asked Itachi. Eren thought it was an odd question to ask out of the blue. We might as well make fun of him. With each breath he gasped, to eliminate all the Titans. Is that so? I see uncertainty in your decisions, Itachi responded. Is it because you failed once already? Recalling his first battle deployment, Eren bit his lip. He and the other members of his squad had been killed by the Titans as a result of his overconfidence. Shut up. Ah, I see, I've struck a chord. Now tell me, who did you fail and what were the consequences of your actions? How much blood of the innocent were spilt? Eren yelled. I said shut the fuck up, he yelled as he charged at Itachi in rage. It came to an abrupt halt when 3 pikes suddenly materialized and impaled one arm and both of his legs to the ground. Ah! Eren let out a painful scream. Blood seeped into the ground and trickled out. He could not move at this point. He had one free arm and nothing else. I see now you have no true strength, Eren snapped. Why are you doing this? I thought we are allies, you bastard. I'm going to have you make a decision here, either kill me or see one of your friends die, Itachi said with a scowl. You wouldn't? Eren called his bluff because he didn't trust him considering his Titan healing abilities. It wasn't the worst thing to pierce him and rough him up a little. He reasoned that once they started working, it would only be a matter of time, but his suggestion was unacceptable. Now then, Itachi said as Eren regained consciousness and saw Petra kneeling with her hands and feet bound, Itachi standing over her with a blade. Itachi mockingly said, kill me or I kill her, your choice, Jaeger. Petra was taken into account by Eren. How on earth did she get here? Whatever, he was still opposed to her passing away. Sniff sniff, she let out a tearful cry. Eren, please help me. Anger filled his eyes. Let her go, he cried, struggling futilely with his binding. No, this isn't possible. This has to be a dream, a nightmare. Eren pondered. Please, wake me up. As he looked up, the shinobi said, no, Eren. The blade gleamed dangerously in the sunlight as he raised it high, saying, this is your reality. Da-thump. No. Stoop. Spleech. The rest of Petra Ral's body slumped over and stayed still, while her severed head rolled across the floor. He caused someone to die once more. Why wasn't he stopped by anyone? This isn't possible, he thought. You, Eren narrated, I'll kill you, while he bit into his free hand. Crack sh. With a burst of smoke and steam, yellow lightning struck the young soldier's body from the sky. Eren's Titan form roared. Ruah-Aarrrrghhhh, as he held the raven-haired shinobi in his titanic hands. Bewildered as to why the transformation occurred, Oluo exclaimed, "What the hell just happened?" Actually, everyone else was curious too. In the middle of his fight, Uren abruptly stopped and appeared somewhat lifeless for a brief moment. He didn't transform until he carefully lifted his hand to bite into it. Uren, however, seemed to seize Itachi in his hands in a moment of rage and let out a powerful roar. What kind of reason or incident led him to act in this way? Hanji was merely observing with wonder and anticipation. She wanted to run into the field with those two, but Eld and Petra had to stop her. Kakashi said, "Boy, Itachi must have really pissed him off." Levi gave Kakashi a slight scowl. He asked icily, "What did he do?" The Titan growled again. "Let's just say Itachi has ways of manipulating others per se." Uren remained standing with Itachi in his hand. As the smoke and dirt cleared, he quickly grabbed the shinobi's body with both hands and started to rip him apart. "Oh shit, Haichu. We better stop him RIP. It's too late." Everyone watched in horror as an enraged Uren tore their shinobi friend in two. Given his outburst of berserker rage, he's probably not even himself right now. The ripped body suddenly broke up into crows, which escaped Uren's grasp and blocked his line of sight. Caw 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 caw. Uren attempted to swat the birds away, but he was currently blinded. Annoying, he thought stupidly. The crows persisted in their obstruction, never giving up on their trick. Pow! Itachi's Susanoo delivered a devastating punch to Uren's face, causing his head to reel back and then fall flat on the ground. Everyone was glued to the screen, waiting to see what would happen next. Guy said, "It's like a monster smacked down." Naruto yelled, "Yash, go Itachi." "No, Uren. Bah. I don't know who to root for. I will murder you. Consume you, assassinate." As he rose from his sprawled position and went in for a tackle, Uren thought. There was a loud crash as Itachi used his Yata mirror shield to swat the approaching mass of muscle into a nearby tree. Uren groaned deeply and then growled as he lunged at Itachi again. As their hands locked and they started to struggle for control, the two humanoid figures collided with one another. Itachi stood motionless as Uren pushed with all of his strength, causing the dirt beneath him to crumble as he realized Susanoo had no mass. Itachi used the chance to pin him down by calling forth his Susanoo to grow a second pair of arms that gave a powerful tug while firmly grasping Uren's legs. Boom! Now pinned down by three arms, Uren landed with a heavy thud. A red glowing blade appeared in the fourth arm, which rose in the air. Slash 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 as it started to smoke, a sign that it was healing. Itachi quickly cut off Uren's titan arms and legs, leaving not even a stub. The severed limbs just began to dissipate. In order to prevent Uren from struggling any longer, Itachi moved to where his Susanoo was, keeping his torso and heads in place. He stepped outside his Susanoo and beckoned everyone forward. When they got there, Hanji rushed to Uren's limbless, prone form and began palpating and examining every inch of Uren's titan form to ensure that nobody was harmed. Itachi made sure to restrain him. Levi, who was only a few feet from Uren's head, said casually, "Let's see if we can knock some sense back into him." Levi stared back at the Titan, who eyed him warily. Itachi also went up to the head, getting close enough to look into its eyes. Tsukuyomi. Uren was startled out of his berserker-like trance. He saw that the sky was red and that he was black with white lines around him. His eyes widened as he recalled fighting Itachi and witnessing his cold-blooded murder of Petra, as if he were in a negative photo. How on earth did things end up this way? I don't get it. Uren clutched his head in bewilderment. Because young Uren, you lack a strong conviction, Itachi said, appearing before him and filling the air with crows. Your will is stronger than your instincts. Take hold of it. Uren shouted again, "What are you getting at? If you would have never doubted your decisions and conviction from the start, all these chain of events would have never happened," he clarified. "Luckily for you, this hasn't become a reality quite yet." Itachi began to fade. "Never question your beliefs as the world whirled around him," he said abruptly. "Never bear a burden alone, or you will fail forever. Wake up, bring yourself back into reality." Uren blinked. Itachi, Captain Levi, and the others stood before him, standing there grinning at him. Petra was all right. "Oi brat, you awake yet, you little fucker," Levi replied. This time, Uren double-checked that he was awake. He was still in his Titan form when he looked down, but he was currently limbless. "This is reality once more, Uren. You have finally awoken. I am truly sorry for my actions, but have you finally reaffirmed your convictions and goals?" Itachi replied. Uren pondered for a while before realizing the significance of everything that had transpired thus far. In response, he nodded. Itachi grinned. "Good. he said as he eventually spread his Susanoo, freeing Uren from his docile state and enabling him to recover completely. After finishing, Uren carefully stood back up and straightened his posture. The day was coming to an end because the sun was already lowering. Groof WWLLL rubbing his empty stomach, Naruto said, "Anyone up for dinner?" As he started to return to the castle, he exclaimed with delight, "Oh boy! I sure glad I found a stash of sealed ramen in one of my scrolls." Guy and Kakashi did the same. Right now, food was a good idea. Everyone was extremely stressed and undernourished after the whole Ren ordeal. It was time to eat. As they waited for an order, Levi's squad glanced at their captain. He sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose. They sprinted off to join the other shinobis, and he waved his hands dismissively. Uren began walking back to the castle for some grub as well, but the ground shook. "Oh no you don't," chastised Hanji about it. He drooled at the thought of conducting research. "You're not gonna go and eat the castle inside and out, you're staying with me, hee." One could not help but notice the expression of disappointment and frustration on his face as he released a monsterly sigh, despite the fact that he was in his terrifying and extremely intimidating Titan form. He took out a ration bar and bit into it, thinking, conwoing this crazy woman, she is likely to stay here with him until the stroke of midnight. But from the corner of his eye, he saw Itachi sitting on a nearby log, merely observing Uren as Hanji analyzed him. "So tell me, what was death like?" He answered, "More peaceful than one can imagine, however I'm a different story. No Sato Konohakor. Despite the war, Konoha had another quiet night. Everything was visible, with the sky illuminated by the full moon. An abandoned temple in Uzumaki is approached by 4 cloaked figures. For what reason are they there?" As they got closer to the ancient, dilapidated building, Sasuke asked Orochimaru, "Is this the place?" Suigetsu said, "It doesn't look like someone is using it." As the group ascended the ancient wooden steps to a shrine, they said, "It's even crumbling down. After all, it is far from the village." An assortment of different masks appeared instantly. Each of them resembled a Shinigami. Sasuke asked, "Which one?" "Let's see, somewhere here," Orochimaru said, looking at the masks in the rows before focusing on one in particular. As a snake slithered out of his sleeve, he lifted his arm to retrieve the mask that was hanging high up the wall. "Here it is." Suigetsu said, "It's kinda creepy. If you found it, let's go already." Like Suigetsu, Orochimaru said, "Yes, let's go to where all the secrets lie." The group finally arrived in Konoha after a short run through the forest and proceeded down its street. Sasuke abruptly separates from the group and leaps onto a building's tall roof. Standing with a slight wind in his face, Sasuke looked out over the village and thought, "This place has changed a lot." Suigetsu became impatient down below. "What's he doing?" he asked aloud himself. Orochimaru remarked, "It's like before I decided to crush Konoha." "Huh? He and the village might have changed, but this is still his birthplace. He needs time to get all sentimental to think about the past and reaffirm his resolve," he said. Suigetsu said, "Oh, so you don't need to anymore? You know, to get sentimental and resolve to crushing Konoha?" Orochimaru just grinned. "You know, if you think about it, we were top class of your men, and we're happened to be in the middle of Konoha. All the strong shinobis are off in the war. Isn't this the perfect opportunity for you?" Suigetsu asked. Orochimaru clarified, "Indeed it is, however, you made on mistake." "Oh, you're no longer Habi." The group eventually arrived at the long-abandoned Uchiha district, which had been reduced to rubble as a result of Pain's attack on the village. Sasuke moved toward a well-known spot and used his Sharingan to unlock the Uchiha Shrine's hidden entrance. Suigetsu looked at Sasuke and said, "Phew, so you need a jutsu to open that door, huh?" Observing the destroyed buildings, Orochimaru remarked, "There is nothing left of the Nakano Shrine anymore." "Appearance doesn't matter, what's important is downstairs," Sasuke replied. He said, "Let's go," and they all went down into the shadowed room. Once Sasuke had finished lighting the pedestals, the secret Uchiha Shrine meeting room was illuminated by a bright flame. They all tossed aside their cloaks. "Stand back," Orochimaru commanded everyone while wearing the Shinigami mask. As soon as the snake Sanin felt his body being controlled, an aura surrounded him. He exclaimed, "Yuawa," as the Shinigami of the Shiki Fujin materialized behind him, its blade in its mouth and its arms extended. A number of souls were released as the Shinigami slowly drew its blade into its hand and cut open its abdomen, but the snake Sanin also experienced the same effect, with blood gushing from his abdomen. "Goo!" He let out a painful grunt. Before long, he was filled with happiness as life returned to him. He exclaimed, "They're back! My hands!" With delight. "I'll call those 4 now, and a little extra foo foo foo." Knowing that he wouldn't last long at this rate, He removed the mask while panting heavily and dripping blood from his mouth. Jugo, Sasuke, Suigetsu. Get ready. He said a self-inflicted wound had consequences, particularly if it was brought on by a Shinigami. Yes. Jugo exclaimed as he began to give Sasuke natural energy. Sasuke remained motionless throughout the process. 6 white Zetsus were immobilized and forced to reveal themselves, causing an immediate reaction. 6 of you. Toby was really careful, I see. The white Zetsu clone swore. Shit, why? I know all about you from my experiments with Hashirama's cells and your sensing abilities as well. To make sure the 5 Zetsus wouldn't escape, Orochimaru bound them with his snake. Suigetsu held one down in place while the other stayed with him. It's fortunate that I have a personal collection of these 5 people's DNA. Fu. Edo Tensai. He exclaimed, slamming his hand into the elaborate seals as the bound Zetsus started to eat them. Dust and debris started to climb up it. Yuwa! Cried all of the bound Zetsus in agony. Orochimaru yelled, here they come, as he switched jutsu into the final Zetsu Suigetsu was holding down. The ones who know everything. The Edo Tensai ritual circles completed the formation of 4 figures. Senju Hashirama as Shodem Hokage, Nidame Hokage, Tobirama Senju, Sandame Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi Yandaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Additionally, Orochimaru thought, the formation of the 5th Edo Tensai was taking longer than anticipated. He laughed to himself as he stumbled to his feet after taking control of the Zetsu's body, saying, no matter, it will be done. Suigetsu exclaimed in wonder, this is the first Hokage, a man said to be the god of shinobi. The real Hashirama. The Shodem merely gazed inquisitively. Tobirama complained, it's that Orochimaru brat again. Hashirama inquired, what do you mean? He probably removed the Shikifujin seal that was trapping us and then used Edo Tensai, Hiruzen clarified. Minato asked, did he manage to remove that seal? Orochimaru-san, how did you do it? You're underestimating me, Minato. Orochimaru shot back. Originally it was a sealing Tekenshui of the Uzumaki clan. After losing my jutsus, I've been studying the ruins and documents of the now lost clan. He went on to explain. Minato said, Shodem, it seems we've all been revived, but was cut off right away by the previous cages, minus Hiruzen. Perplexed and inquisitive looks. With his brother standing next to him, wondering the same thing while keeping his arms crossed, Hashirama exclaimed, who are you? Minato merely pivoted to display his ostentatious cloak to his forebears. He pointed to the kanji that ran down his back and declared, I'm the 4th Hokage. Ooh. A 4th? Exclaimed Hashirama. So I see, the village has been stable for a long time. So this is the legendary shinobi, Suigetsu thought, looking at his current antics with some skepticism. Actually, I'm not sure if it is stable or not. I actually died and got sealed before the 3rd did, said Minato. Hashirama asked, really? Then who's the current Hokage? A new voice said, well, that would be the lovely Tsunade, of course, and everyone turned to see who it belonged to. A tall man, a great man among men, stood there radiating greatness. Minato exclaimed, no way, you too? With a start. Hiruzen exclaimed in shock and rage, you've gone too far this time, Orochimaru. 2 hours have passed since Eren was able to master his Titan abilities, and he was now testing them with Hanji. The outcomes have been encouraging and successful. Eren demonstrated basic reasoning skills, the ability to copy movement, and the ability to carefully construct structures out of large materials. His inability to speak was the only issue. He could only make roars and different grunts because his mouth structure was too erratic for verbal communication. He rode on the ground and used hand gestures to communicate. With his eyes fixed on the full moon, Levi remarked, it's getting late, it is best we head back for now. Itachi got up from where he was sitting and nodded. He was a little impressed by Ren's skills. After seeing his development today, he would be a powerful force to be reckoned with if he were to perfect them. Hanji moaned, time to go already? Nevertheless, she was able to obtain the valuable information about Eren. The only thing left to do was figure out how to seal that hole in case they decided to go outside. Alright, Eren. Let's head back now. Try and come out if you can, Hanji screamed. Eren, in his Titan form, dropped to his hands and knees and appeared to be focused intently. He gave a focused grunt, but nothing came of it. Levi let out a sigh. He quickly activated his maneuver gear, grabbed Eren's neck, and slashed his blade once vertically. Plop! Eren emerged from the nape of the neck and fell backward, tearing himself from the Titan, muscle and sinew snapping. As he did so, he was clearly strained and exhausted from using his other form for an extended period of time, as he lay on his back and panted. Phew. Eren sighed with weariness. Our objective of retaking the wall will be closer than ever if we continue at this pace. I must admit, Eren, you are making some progress with your new form, Itachi commented as he stood up and held out his hand to the easygoing teen, who accepted it with pleasure. Eren's eyes blazed with newly discovered confidence as he exclaimed, "Thanks, I admit, I may not be the strongest or whatever, but I will reclaim what was lost and drive out the last of the Titans." Itachi grinned. He said, "That's good to hear," turning to face Levi. "Shall we be off?" He said, "Let's," and the four of them got on their horses and rode off to headquarters, leaving a steaming Titan corpse to vanish. "Oi, Kakashi!" Guy exclaimed, startling Kakashi out of his reverie. "Are you alright?" Kakashi gave a small nod. In reality, however, he wasn't. He was still troubled by his last encounter with the masked man. Even though it had been almost a week, there was a connection between their Sharingans. "Where did you get that eye?" "In the Kanabi Bridge, where you were named the hero of the Sharingan." "There is no way that it could be him, it simply cannot," Kakashi moaned. Guy touched the shoulder of Kakashi. "Well, whatever it is, my eternal rival, you cannot let it get to you. Your pupil Naruto is enduring, knowing that as time passes, Madara poses an even greater threat, so until we get home, we will endure as well," he said to reassure his rival. Kakashi let out a frustrated sigh, but he couldn't help but grin a little. He will definitely not allow his past lamentations to bring him down when he is needed. "Thanks, Guy, I know can always depend on you." He gave him a confident pat on the back and exclaimed, "Haha. That's the rival I once always knew." Across the hall in his room, Oluo shouted, "Keep it down. I'm trying to sleep," clearly irritated by their boisterous behavior. Guy responded with his good guy pose as he leapt onto his bed and changed into lighter clothes for sleep. "Maybe it is best we get some rest now, Guy, that way we can begin our early morning exercises. What do you say?" Kakashi suggested. Having sealing scrolls to store their personal items, such as clothing, food, equipment, etc., was a luxury for the Kakashi. As Kakashi slowly closed his eyes and fell asleep, it goes without saying that the shinobis had everything they needed when the time came. After tying up their horses and entering the castle, Levi and his small group eventually made it back to base. The interior was completely dark. Hanji held a small candle close by and lit it quickly, adding a little light to the room. Itachi just strolled through the corridors without any problems after all. His crimson eyes glowed demonically in the shadows of darkness, so the darkness never really bothered him. Hanji exclaimed, Wait. At least take a lantern or candle with you before you go, out of concern for the Uchiha." Itachi responded, "You needn't to worry, I'll be here all night," before vanishing into the night, leaving only a confused Hanji, a disinterested Levi, and a slightly alarmed Eren in his wake. Eren said, "Maybe it's best if we leave him be." They all agreed and parted ways to head to their separate sleeping areas, saying, "We'll see him again in the morning anyway." Indeed, Edo Tensei is a very fascinating kinjutsu enabling the dead to be called back to battle. Kabuto used to reincarnate many well-known shinobi, including Itachi. Especially at such a high level of skill, the resurrected proved to be a formidable force, nearly as dangerous as they were when they were alive, and the technique gave them unlimited chakra and stamina. Itachi developed insomnia because he just didn't feel the need to eat or sleep, though he could if he so desired. In some ways, he was the pinnacle of a zombie ninja. Itachi just stared out the window at the moon, sighing, knowing that it would be hours before dawn. Sigh. "Sasuke, I wonder how you are faring so far," he pondered as he kept looking up at the starry sky, noting strange constellations and other things. All eyes were focused on the moon, which was high and bright in the sky. He said to himself in a whisper, "A full moon. Just like that night." Sharingan would always activate as he left and resumed his prowling through the corridors from a considerable distance in the base. He felt the presence of a moving chakra. He looks into who might be awake at such an hour out of curiosity. Olu complained to himself, "Bah, those noisy idiots making all this ruckus in the middle of the freaking night." He must have been annoyed by the earlier commotion because he got up to go to the kitchen and get a drink of water wearing loose clothing and a nightcap that covered his tangled locks of curly hair. He stumbled through the darkness quietly while carrying a lantern on his way to get a drink. He turned abruptly to the left of the corridor that housed the kitchen doors. Inside, he placed his lantern on a plain wooden counter that was fixed to the ground while he took a mug and started filling it with water from a nearby barrel. He filled it to overflowing, then gulped down the cool liquid as it soothed his parched throat and satisfied his thirst. He finally turned to get his light source, leaving a mouthful of water to swish around his mouth and putting the cup aside. What he witnessed next will likely cause him to occasionally glance over his shoulder. He just stood motionless. A menacing figure with scarlet eyes that seemed to look into his soul stood 3 feet away from him. Its face was dark, but his lantern nearby gave it a spooky glow. Oluo did what any other person would do at that point. PPPPPBBBTTT. His eyes were clearly filled with fear and fatigue, and as he turned to make a quick escape, he choked on his water and spat it all over the would-be attacker other than the Titans. He had never really believed in monsters or other beings that haunted people, but today he was not going to have any of that. Ah! MMMMPH, he screamed, but his scream was cut short when a rough hand suddenly clamped over his mouth, turning him around. Itachi was the only one holding out the lantern for Oluo, who reluctantly retracted it. He was now drenched from head to shoulders from his earlier outburst. For a while, there was an awkward silence. As he began to relax, his heart continued to race. God damn, holy shit man, you sure scared the hell out of me. Itachi started wiping himself with his cloak and said, "Pardon me, I was just wondering who would be up at such an hour." Oluo laughed to himself. Hey, I could ask you the same thing, everyone else is asleep, so why aren't you? Itachi turned back into the darkness, opened a window, and leapt out onto the roof, saying, "Well, let's just say I'm a special case." Oluo walked blearily back to his sleeping quarters, murmuring to himself, "TCH, they're all a strange bunch." The hours have passed. Itachi was lying on his back on the roof, waiting for the sun to rise. Just before dawn, how much he missed those days when his least worries were danger and concern. It's one thing to be away from home and to know that your younger brother is fighting alone in a war, but he couldn't help but feel comfortable in this setting. He would not grow to appreciate this on a daily basis. From a distance came the sound of rapid mechanical whirring. As he hastily got up and made his way through the darkness to his destination, he thought, it sounded a lot like the devices the soldiers used to maneuver around. He moved around the scouting legion's camp as stealthily as a bird soaring through the forest, hiding behind a building. As far as he can tell, he was in a courtyard of some kind that was enclosed by a strong wall. He saw a figure in a green cloak come out of a tent holding a bloody, steaming blade. Since the majority of the person's body was hidden by their cloak, he was unable to tell if they were male or female. Since their uniforms were similar, he assumed that person was a member of the military here, but he or she would still be impossible to identify. However, he couldn't help but sense that such a person was cold and untrustworthy. Abruptly, the target started to move on. He moved quickly between the shadows, pursuing and following that person with his own icy, calculating eyes. Since it was almost dawn, he knew he couldn't remain hidden in the shadows indefinitely. Soon, he was going to approach directly. Thinking they were alone, the enigmatic figure slipped through the cloth barrier and moved to another nearby tent. The intruder was so wrong. It walked towards a binded titan which was captured during the invasion of Trost. Since then, it has been preserved here for research purposes, and Hanji herself gave it a unique name, Bean. As the approaching figure brandished its sharp blade, prepared to strike down the prone titan, the brown-haired titan gazed at it with a spooky expression. Bean, as stupid as ever, just watched. The blade dropped in one quick motion. Clang. The intruder gave a startled grunt. With a small, strangely shaped knife in hand, the crimson-eyed ninja stood in the way of the titan's blade. It appears that he was more than skilled at it. Itachi parried the titan-killing blade with his kunai as the newcomer stepped back in caution. I've never seen him before. It appears that he is also a shinobi. I had better be careful. The individual reasoned that it wouldn't be good to know how their encounter would turn out. With kunai in a battle stance, Itachi uttered, I don't know what you are doing, but I cannot allow you to meddle around as far as I can tell. The stranger ran. Wait! Itachi shouted as he pushed the blinding cloth aside and pursued the individual outside the tent. He saw a flash of metal that was getting closer. He brought his knife down on the creases of the blade, shattering it in half as it was meant to, using his tactical reflexes and calculating eyes to parry every blow from the blade with his kunai once more. The hunter chased after it again, and the figure ran away again. Recently, a scouting legion member high in his observatory station got up, got ready for his daily tasks, and watched the goings-on around him. The man yawned and stretched, knowing this would be another few hours until someone takes over his shift. Unknowing to him, a game of cat and mouse was right nearby, as was heading towards him fast. The man turned to see who had been given permission to use the 3D maneuver gear at this time of day, and he heard the familiar shot of pressurized gas and the whirring of wires. Honestly, who could be using that at this? A green blur shot by and knocked the man over the edge of the watchtower, causing him to become silent. He recognized the standard maneuver gear, cloak, and uniform, but it was impossible to identify the man in the red cloak who jumped and ran at a cruel pace. He mumbled, trying to hold on to something. Why? He clung to the tower for dear life, fortunate to have an iron support protruding from it. With a sigh of relief, the man started to climb back to the opposite side. Kriak! When the man realized the iron was rusted, he exclaimed in a panic, Oh! It didn't appear to be able to sustain him for very long. He would be doomed to fall to a pile of rocks if he made any hasty movements. Help! Itachi was quickly catching up to the stranger when he leapt over another small building. He reached out for the cloak, flopping wildly in the wind, knowing that it was only a matter of time before he caught his prey. He thought, it's over, until, help! When Itachi looked back, he saw a man clinging to the watchtower for dear life. Unfortunately, as he turned around, he made the decision to do what was right and give up the chase. Just my luck. The man moaned as perspiration started to accumulate in his hands, making it more difficult for him to hold on. I never got to get that taste of that meat John promised me, he said, recalling his life's regrets. His final moments seemed to go on forever before he finally gave up. What? As he soared through the air, wind and all, the man felt two arms grab him bridal style and turned to face his savior. Well, you are the one. Recognizing the person who had briefly been with him prior to his fall, he exclaimed. There's always a next him, he thought, as Itachi glanced back down the horizon and saw the stranger swiftly vanish into the streets. This time, both men were firmly on the ground, so his rescue was halted. The soldier was told by the raven-haired Nin, you should be more careful next time. Yes, the man scratched the back of his head awkwardly in embarrassment. Will do. By the way, what's your? He had vanished. It would probably be best if he told everyone what he had seen, Itachi said as he walked back to the headquarters where everyone was. Yosh. My eternal adversary. Let's start our morning routine. Guy grinned broadly as the sun gleamed off his teeth and exclaimed as he posed, pointing straight at the rising sun. Regardless of whether they are on or off duty, Kakashi was correct when he said that training and conditioning are crucial for all shinobi. Come see Kakashi. What is it going to be today? 500 times around the base on our hands. No. Hold on. What if we ran 100 times around Trost? Guy started doing an excessive amount of push-ups. 105 seconds, to be exact, and got carried away with excitement. How does he even? Guy, how about we spar in the morning? To Guy's chagrin, Kakashi grinned and said, I think it is my turn to pick this time around after all. Ukai. Get ready for my eternal rival, my hot-blooded youth. With one arm in front of him and one behind his back, he assumed his combat stance. A figure appears in the distance, moving toward two shinobis from the open field. Well, at last, Itachi was walking back at his own pace, surveying the area and its surroundings, and wondering why he even came across a man trying to blend in as though he was there to watch him. Of course, Itachi had already sensed the man's presence even though he was camouflaged, as evidenced by the surprised expression on his face when he approached him from behind while he was preoccupied with a bush, and heaven knows why he fled. But Itachi hoped they wouldn't cause any trouble later on when he noticed a familiar insignia of a shield with a unicorn in the middle, which meant that man belonged to some sort of organization. He will be more cautious going forward. But for now, Itachi thought, I'm just half an acre away from home, free, and hoping to see my comrades. Before he knew it, two figures appeared in an open field, and who could fail to recognize the dynamic duo of Kakashi and Guy? Oh, Itachi-kun, have you been anywhere? Kakashi spoke to the Onurfix with some caution. Out, was his direct response to the question, choosing to make fun of Kakashi. But Guy gave him a slight scowl in return. Is something not right? Itachi inquired. Despite this you are our comrade, Kakashi said. I just wanted to let you know that you have my complete lack of trust. In addition to your involvement with the Akatsuki, you have a long history of wrongdoing. I would try to kill you right now if I had the chance, but Kakashi says otherwise, Guy remarked. Indeed, ever since Itachi's sudden appearance, Guy has been apprehensive. He would always stiffen up a little whenever the raven-haired Nin walked by or just gazed at him. There is no other person that I fully trust other than my eternal rival, so I shall take his word for it. Itachi replied, I'm glad to hear it, knowing that Guy is unaware of the truth behind everything that was Itachi. Kakashi couldn't help but furrow his brows. Guy, pay attention. Itachi, Kakashi. The decisions he made in life were for the benefit of the village and others, and all he asks is that the Uchiha name and honor remain untarnished. To reveal such a secret, even to Guy, would be a disgrace to all he has fought for. The real reasons behind the Uchiha massacre, the coup d'etat, the Akatsuki, everything. He sincerely intends to leave everything to Sasuke in order to restore what was lost for the Uchiha. At last, he looked away from Kakashi. Fine, sighed Kakashi. You too, what are you concealing? Despite his tendency to be a complete idiot and dunderhead, Guy was not one for lies, so he asked with suspicion. I apologize, Guy, I don't think I should say that. Especially with Itachi present, no one would gain anything from it. Even if I told you now, consider it a show of respect for Itachi and me to remain silent. No animosity toward Guy, Kakashi said. With an exasperated sigh, Guy said, "Very well, I should do the same since Kakashi trusts you," he said as he started his morning routine, disappearing into the distance without Kakashi. "Sooner or later he will find out." Itachi retorted, "It's best that some things be lost in history, for the honor of my clan, the village, for peace, too." "So be it, Hanji." The squad leader, Uren and Hanji were talking when a soldier stormed through the doors of the dining hall. "A titan in captivity has been slain." "What?" Hanji's expression was one of pure agony as she leapt from her spot and ran outside sadly. The man's prediction came true as the air was filled with smoke from a rotting titan body. This was done by a soldier. Who would be so foolish as to murder our precious test subjects? There was a flurry of conversation and gossip among the soldiers. Saw Anie. Rows of soldiers couldn't help but stare and wonder who would do something like this as the Hanji literally began to cry her eyes out, causing a huge commotion. Take a look at the commander, Oluo muttered. "I'm going apeshit over this." Petra gave him a stern look and a quick elbow to the ribs. "Let's head out," Levi told his group. "The rest will be handled by the military police." "Why yes," was Uren's response. Uren was also unable to avoid witnessing this spectacle, and he was more perplexed than ever as to what had transpired and why. However, he was quickly jolted out of his reverie when he felt a pair of hands grab him by the shoulders. He turned and saw that Commander Erwin owned it. "Commander, what's happening? How does it appear to you? Who do you believe to be the adversary in this situation?" "Huh?" Levi was the only one who looked back and realized what the question actually meant. As he released his grip and left, he said, "Sorry, strange question." "All right," Uren thought, his confusion growing. Standing atop the castle's roof, two figures observed the whole chaos below. Kakashi pondered, "So all this for a titan?" "Yes, apparently. They were test subjects to find out more knowledge on how to defeat the titans, although I would say they would get more results from Uren. No doubt these subjects would nonetheless valuable to them considering the lengths Hei would go to capture a single one." Itachi clarified because he was familiar with them. Although they were bothersome little creatures, they proved their value by frightening the unprepared. The heads of the two shinobis turned as the blond man with his manover gear reached the top of the roof. He asked, "So Commander Erwin, fine day today, is it?" Itachi was the first to say, "There is no doubt about it, it was one of the soldiers. I have a first-hand account on this for I encountered the person myself during their act of treason." With a nod of approval, the commander asked, "So you're Itachi, I presume? Captain Levi did make an interesting mention about you in a recent report." He stated, "Nice to meet you then. I know you haven't been here long, but do you have any leads on who it may be?" For obvious reasons, Itachi shook his head. "From what I could tell when I traded blow with the assailant, it is a female soldier estimated to about 140,150 centimeters in height. Facial structure and hair remains unknown. Due to her being cloaked, she got away despite the fact I had the greater chance at capturing her." He motions them to accompany him, saying, "Thank you, you've been more than helpful. Come, let us discuss things in private," for which they are grateful. "Oh?" Commander Erwin inquired inquisitively, "What is it, Hitaki-san?" Wondering how a shinobi of his caliber could make a mistake. He remarked rather somberly, "I totally forgot about Naruto." Erwin gave a small smile. "I don't think a young man like him couldn't cause too much trouble by himself after all. He has a guardian looking over him. A killer bee? Was it? They both are a lively duo, I admit," he said with a grin. "However, they did mention something about Biju training of some sort when I passed by them. Can't be too bad if it's just training, right?" Shit, Kakashi thought, realizing that he had to locate those two immediately. Killer bee is understandable, but adding Naruto to the mix makes a destructive mishap. Training for Rasen Shuriken was already very demanding. It was quite another matter to deal with a Biju, as he jumped out of the building to locate the two Jinchurikis. He quickly vanished down the meadow, saying, "Sorry, let Itachi do the debriefing for me." "Okay then." Hiruzen yelled at his former pupil, "You've gone too far this time, Orochimaru," with rage. Sanin, the snake, just laughed, "Foo foo foo, it wouldn't be a gathering of legendary shinobis if you weren't in it after all, isn't that right?" Jiraiya. At last, the fifth Edo Tensei had taken shape. All that was visible was a tall man with his characteristic long, white, spiky mane, wooden sandals, and a scroll on his back. A shinobi's true measure is not how he lives, but how he dies. Their worth is demonstrated by their actions prior to death rather than by their actions during their lifetime. In retrospect, my story is replete with setbacks. I was consistently turned down by Tsunade. I failed to protect my teacher, my student, and my friend. My achievements have all been trivial and unimportant in comparison to the Hokage who came before me. I desired to pass away like them. That man's final words were those, but he did not anticipate returning in this manner. A fresh start. He considered he was going to make a show out of whatever it is now, though. It is said that I'm the toad sage in all north, south, east, and west. I am a man that all other men envy. A man that makes all women shudder in awe. A handsome man that can even soothe the crying child. It is IJIRRAAIYAA, he exclaimed. Clapping his wooden sandals on the ground and striking his kabuki pose, he even called forth his toad companion to join him. The snake Sanin shook his head when the Shodem asked, "Come on, really, any more surprises?" "Oh, okay, good. Now then, WHO are you?" he repeated, but to a different individual, as Jiraiya merely made a mistake and fell backwards in embarrassment and shame. Hiruzen just let out a sigh. Things never change, do they? The two combat-hardened men entered a dimly lit room with papers and books strewn across tables that held whatever information or secrets might be disclosed. Erwin turned to Itachi and shut the door behind him. "I'll be blunt from here on. I need you to do a top priority mission for us." Itachi guessed correctly what he was going to ask right away. Bodyguard, assassination, and espionage. He knew too much about either of those. Itachi questioned, "What is it that you need to be done?" Erwin approached a black chalkboard and started gazing at the scribbles on it. "Before I tell you, I must let you know something about my home, Itachi," he replied. "Many years ago, when I just a young lad, my father, who was also a schoolteacher, taught our history and such. With that said, no one in our little class argued with the teacher, knowing that he couldn't be wrong. Well, that was broken when I stood up in the middle of class and challenged what really happened in our history. I have never seen my father so shocked," Erwin said with his eyes closed. "My father has told me the truth, that there was something not right about our society, but mostly our government. They were trying to hide something," he said, Erwin murmured. "Eventually word got out and my father suddenly died a mysterious death that was no accident, that only confirmed my suspicion of something bigger than the king himself if the truth were to go out." Erwin tightened his fists. Itachi surmised, "So you want me to infiltrate your own government?" "Yes." Itachi paused to reflect. He certainly had experience in this kind of situation from his time working as a double agent for both Konoha and the Uchiha, but would he want to go through another tragedy like that again? The commander interrupted Itachi before he could say anything. Itachi was a little taken aback and thought, "You are one of the only people who I can entrust this task with." "But you've barely just met me," exclaimed Itachi. "How could you know I'm fit for such a—" The commander cut him off again, azure blue eyes peering intently into Itachi's scarlet ones. "Because I can see it in you, darkness." Itachi gave a small shudder. This man, he thought, he is more than he seems to be. Erwin turned back to the drawing board, and Itachi listened intently as he said, "Do not worry, I will give you time to think about that mission for now. Let's focus on the task ahead, about our next expedition beyond the wall." As he raced across fields and plains in search of the two Jinchurikis, Kakashi muttered to himself, "Where can they possibly be?" He was already aware of Killer Bee's lively nature prior to the war, but combining that with his overactive student would undoubtedly lead to disaster in almost any situation. In a desperate attempt to find the two, Kakashi ran, hopped, leapt, and dashed abruptly. He sensed an explosion close by and a spike in his chakra. "Okami," he pondered hopefully, there was no collateral damage caused by them. Almost 2 hours have passed since he woke up, and Uzumaki Naruto was eager to start training again. After a lengthy break, he yawned and stretched in readiness. "Ah, so Octopops, what's in store for training today?" he inquired. B, who was also a little excited, grinned cunningly. "How about some Biju Dama ball?" Naruto also grinned. "Oh, you are so on," he exclaimed as he transformed into a tiny Biju Dama the size of a soccer ball while in Kyuubi chakra mode. "Here I come," he exclaimed as he kicked the Hachibi Jinchuriki with the compressed chakra ball. "Your moves are fine, but are sublime," B exclaimed as he powerfully swung the menacing ball back. The volatile ball was struck back and forth between the two until it was hardly a blur. "Baka!" A voice inside Naruto called out. He screamed, "Squandering my chakra again, eh?" Kurama roared inside of him. "How about actually using it for something useful instead of playing kiddie ball?" Yuki said, "Hey, it's no use, Kurama." As Kurama sighed in annoyance, Yuki said laid-backly, "Once these fools get going, they won't stop till something goes amok. Just let it happen and enjoy the show." After hitting the ball for the nth time, Naruto heard a distant voice. "Naruto." With a frightening expression on his face and eye, Naruto turned to see his sensei following him. "You snuck away without letting me know. Now you are going to face the consequences?" Kakashi's face darkened as he formed a tiger seal with his hands and one shining eye. He was all too aware of what was about to happen. "Oi! No, Kakashi-sensei." he exclaimed as he desperately started to defend himself by covering his butt when Naruto realized he hadn't hit the Biju Dama back in time. A sudden burst of air passed his head. The ball flew past the three of them so fast that it destroyed several trees before exploding with a loud boom in the distance. B said out loud, "Aw shit." In the countryside, a farmer proudly stood in front of his cabbage field, wiping his sweaty forehead after hours of hard work. The seeds were finally dispersed evenly among the lots. He turned to pull his cabbage cart to the closest market, grinning arrogantly, when all of a sudden, whoosh crack boom, the man slowly turned around in disbelief to see his fields destroyed, his precious cargo totally destroyed, and a clear crater in the middle. It was a miracle he was unharmed. However, he wasn't worried about that. "My cabbages!" cried the man horrifiedly. At that moment, a figure appeared in the distance. Naruto sighed until he saw the devastated field. "Man, that went pretty far. I'm just glad Kakashi left it off with just a scolding." "Oh." With a death glare, the farmer turned to face him. You brat? You did this, didn't you?" The old man's accusation was true, but Naruto panicked and put his hands in front of him defiantly. Naruto said, "Wait a second, old man." With a hint of regret, the elderly man huffed just as a sizable pouch slammed into his face. "You are gonna fix this. Otherwise I'll call the military police on your sorry butt." Naruto stood alert. "Yosh. Right away, old man," Naruto exclaimed, making his preferred hand gesture. Taju Kage Bushin no Jutsu. With seeds in hand, hundreds of Naruto clones immediately flooded the fields, quickly replanting and removing damaged crops. It took only a few minutes to finish the task. The elderly man yelled in shock. Unable to contain it, he cried out, "Witch, black magic, devil." As he ran with all his strength, he exclaimed, "That's it, I'm calling the police on you." "Oh no you don't," the elderly man exclaimed as 10 shadow clones encircled him. The elderly man grinned uneasily and said, "Hey, you wouldn't hurt an old man, would ya, sonny boy?" Harem no jutsu, as smoke billowed into the surrounding space. "Wah!" The man covered his face in terror, but as soon as the smoke cleared, he opened his eyes in even more disbelief. Numerous attractive and curvaceous women were standing in front of him, grabbing at every single one of his limbs. The old man's perverted giggles were like a dream come true, but his blood pressure quickly spiked to the point where he passed out from excitement. Naruto dismissed his clones and cancelled the transformations. "Phew, close one," he said as he started to go back to Kakashi. He could not believe his eyes to see that the rumors were true, so a cloaked figure remained hidden in the distance. There were men with strong magical abilities who might have been able to take over the kingdom. He needs to notify his superiors of this right away. Hours have passed, and Guy completed his 50th lap around town without ever easing up his training regimen in his hands. After making a quick correction to his posture, Guy made the decision to return and end the evening. There was an event going on, though, and he noticed something else. Rows of trainees were lining up in front of a stage. Everyone stood stoically, as if waiting for orders, while braziers lit the area. At that moment, everyone on stage saw the man he identified as Erwin Smith. Guy listened curiously to find out what was happening. Guy eventually discovered that this was some kind of ceremony to determine which branches of the military were interested in attending, and the minutes passed quickly. To be precise, Erwin was right to the point. Erwin told the trainees, "I'm not going to lie, many of you will die. But those who live and survive will become seasoned Titan killers." He stated, "Those who will join stay, the rest, leave." When he was done speaking, many turned and left, but a few people had the guts to stay. Some are even in tears. With boredom, Ymir said to Krista, "Oi, if you were going to cry, why did you even stay?" Connie regretted it, but he held his ground. He could have made his parents proud by joining the military police, but after what had happened over the past few days, a part of him wanted to stay. Sasha was so upset about what she had done that she was on the verge of crying. Mikasa and Armin, who was a little anxious, stood expressionless. Jean stood, aware of his determination. Less than 15 of the trainees remained in the end. "You are all very brave and I thank you," Erwin remarked. "You are now a member of the Scouting Legion." "Dismissed," Erwin said as he turned to leave. "Haha. I congratulate you too, my youthful comrades," Guy exclaimed as he jumped in and celebrated by headlocking Sasha and Connie. He exclaimed aloud, "You two are the most courageous of all of them out of everyone here. Together, we will regain your lost homes from the most unyouthful monsters and ensure a safe future for the generations to come." "What's the matter with this guy?" Connie reflected to himself. "I no longer even give a damn." Sasha pondered with Connie and Sasha hanging in the air behind him. Guy declared, "Come. We shall train your minds and body to its limits and explode in youth," as he launched himself at high speed. Jean watched with a mixture of frustration and worry. It appears that they have formed a foolish trio. We will undoubtedly have an incredible time. Rainer's perspiration stopped when he saw what had happened. I'm relieved it's not me, but I feel horrible all the same. That marked the end of the ceremony. Hours have passed since his meeting with Erwin, during which they discussed plans for the upcoming expedition that would make the most of the highly skilled shinobis in their current formations. Itachi wandered the town looking for some kind of clothing store. He had made the decision to grant Erwin's request because he was certain that the other shinobis would be more than enough for the expedition and that he wouldn't need to be added. He should be the one to accept the assignment. But he was aware that a change of clothes would be necessary for his current task. Although his cloak served its purpose, he felt the need for a change. Itachi finally came to a stop when he noticed that a store was still open. Even though it was almost late as he entered the store, he had better move quickly and make a request while he could. It was closing time, and Bertha, the proud middle-aged owner of her seamstress shop, had just finished rearranging formal suits and custom orders. Abruptly, a man wearing a red cloak entered as the bell at the front door rang. Bertha studied him closely because she had never seen someone like him. Aristocratic features, flowing black hair, and pale skin. In addition, he was very attractive. She said sweetly, "Hello there, young man, what bring you this late to my store?" Itachi bowed his head respectfully and said, "I know it is late, but I was wondering if you could take a request of mine." The woman apologized, saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, dear, but I'm booked till next month or so on personal requests." "Oh, excuse me, then I'll be." A bell rang, and the front door opened again. A man sighed with relief as he approached the woman in the store. "Honey, just checking on ya, I have quite a close call today," he said. His eyes widened in disbelief. "You?" he exclaimed, gesturing to the man with the raven hair. Itachi pondered this man's identity until he recalled while pursuing the Titan suspect, he had previously saved the same man from falling to his death. She became aggressive and exclaimed, "What is it, dearie? This man is a delinquent of some sort?" He retorted to her, "No, not at all. He is my savior," he exclaimed, reaching forward to give Itachi a heartfelt handshake. "If it weren't for him, Bertha, I wouldn't be standing right here, right now." The man smiled and said, "So what brings you to my wife's lovely store, stranger?" When Itachi recognized the man, he cleared his throat and snapped out of his reverie. "Well, I was planning to ask for a request on a custom." Itachi was interrupted again. The man turned to his wife and yelled, "Say no more, Bertha. Make this man your top priority customer for just this once." Bertha let out a startled gasp. Her husband had never done this for anyone but himself. "Well, I suppose a friend of my husband is a friend of mine." Itachi was taken aback by everything. What a fantastic turn of events. "So what is it that you would like to request, dearie?" asked Bertha. She opened a scroll that Itachi had taken out of his pocket and given to her. "Wow, I don't think I ever seen such things in fashion like this before, but nothing is too much of a challenge for me," she exclaimed. "I will have this ready within 3 days." Itachi grinned because, for once, everything was going as he had hoped. He bowed again and said, "I am grateful for your generosity." As he turned to go, he felt a hand grab his shoulder. "What name shall I write this under, dearie? I would also like to hear my husband's savior's name as well." He said, "Uchiha Itachi," and bowed again before leaving the room and vanishing into the night. Such a nice young man. In another part of Konoha, "I have decided not let my brother's sacrifice be in vain and save the village." Hashirama grinned. "So it is decided then, Tobirama. Teleport us out of here at once." As they all left the Uchiha shrine, Tobirama said warily, "I can't so as long Orochimaru has some restrictions on me. Either way, I'm not sensing Madara's malicious chakra anywhere. This troubles me." Hashirama surveyed the village he had once remembered. Ah, what a nostalgic sight. "Hokages. Let us all watch over this village once more," Hashirama exclaimed, his self-proclaimed greatness getting the better of him. "For goodness sake." Tobirama touched his brother's shoulder, and Minato and Hiruzen did the same. For generations, they watched over the village from their separate stone faces, which they all teleported to. "Let's do this," returning to the Legion base for scouting. The moon continued to shine, illuminating everyone beneath it, and night soon arrived. After Itachi explained the new plans and strategies of the Scouting Legion to integrate the shinobis into the groups, Kakashi said in a sympathetic tone, "I see." Kakashi addressed the raven-haired ninja, "So I understand you are going on a different mission than us?" "Yes, Erwin had come to me directly to ask. Such a favor must be important too, seeing I am one of the only few that be entrusted with such a task." "Well, don't die on the job to whatever lies ahead," Kakashi jokingly said. "Haha, this kinda reminds me of our old Anbu days, you know." me being your senpai and all? Kakashi became silent. Look Itachi, I know you are used to these kind of things, but even then, you don't have to do this alone. I know, but right now, Naruto is our world's light. Where there is light, there is darkness, Itachi replied. As Itachi concluded, he quickly vanished into the night once more. If it is necessary to become part of the darkness again so that the future may prosper, then I won't hesitate. After all, we were once Anbu. Now, who knows where he'll go? Kakashi brushed off concerns that Itachi might cause any problems. He currently has a month to get ready for the Scouting Legion expedition, a good amount of time to prepare everything. However, Kakashi senses that the danger increases with time. Madara will stop at nothing to locate the Jinchurikis. A military brigade grunted to his superior, Captain Kenny, sir. I have the recent reports on rumors of the new mysterious group. As it turns out, the rumors are in fact 100% true. Kenny took a sip from his hip flask and sighed. He thought, recalling recent reports, these men can cause a lot of trouble, no doubt. Men who can defeat a large number of people without dying. Faster than anyone with maneuver gear, or, for that matter, deviant titans more powerful than anything previously observed. He reasoned that these men might be able to use sheer force to overthrow the kingdom. The fact that they hardly know anything about them bothered him the most. No history, no birth certificates, not even their full intelligence. They have been supporting the battle against the titans thus far, but he believes they have yet to demonstrate their full potential. To be honest, Kenny was eager to get rid of these men as quickly as possible, but since he can never underestimate an unknown opponent, that proved problematic, particularly these individuals. Their power was what most intrigued him. How did they obtain it? How was it accomplished? Is it possible for him to do it again? There is a ton more to discover about them. Which is largely why he initially decided against wanting to kill them. He had to know more about them in order to exercise that power. He is committed to catching one of them alive. Lettuce, the anti-human squad show these bumpkins a welcome to our kingdom, he said as he drained the alcohol from his flask with a last swig.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.